Hey everyone, welcome to another adventure. Today, Audio Novel presents Police in Los Angeles by the amazing Mutter. Supporting talented authors like Mutter is what keeps these incredible stories alive. Be sure to check out their Patreon or join their Discord, links are in the description. And if you love audiobooks like this, visit my Patreon for more. Your support helps bring these stories to life. Thanks for being part of this journey. Let's dive into the story. Police in Los Angeles. Chapter 26, finally no longer a rookie. The detective couple warmly welcomed Jack and Hannah. Since their first visit, Jack and Hannah had been visiting them about every other week. Jack would perform healing spells on Hunter, and the charming Hannah had become a delight for the elderly couple, especially for Dee Dee, who almost treated her like her own daughter. This time, Jack used the excuse of Hunter's significant rehabilitation progress to completely heal the area of his brain affected by the hemorrhage. While Dee Dee hugged him in gratitude, he also took the opportunity to repair her overworked body. With this intervention, it was likely that the elderly couple would live comfortably past 100 years. After all, they were Jack's childhood idols and an exceptionally loving couple who deserved protection, especially in a place like the USA, where such lasting love was as rare as a panda. As they bid farewell to Hunter and Dee Dee in the evening, Hannah, gazing thoughtfully at the receding silhouette of the small villa through the car window, suddenly asked, "Did you know that Dee Dee was once assaulted, and later Hunter avenged her?" "What?" Jack was so startled by her words that he nearly lost control of the steering wheel. He certainly knew this part of their story. Back when he watched the episode about the revenge, he was so furious he wanted to strangle the writer and director. But how did Hannah know about this? "I never heard about it. Did you two talk about this when you were alone?" Jack suspiciously glanced at Hannah. It wasn't like Dee Dee to bring up such a painful topic out of the blue. Suddenly, a realization hit him. Considering Hannah's psychological issues, he had an ominous guess. Dee Dee wouldn't randomly bring up such a distressing past. The only explanation was that Hannah had confided her own troubles to Dee Dee, and Dee Dee was using her experience to comfort her. Gripping the steering wheel tightly, Jack didn't speak. The thought of this usually cheerful girl having gone through such an ordeal made his breath heavier with anger. Forcing down his fury, he reached over and patted Hannah's head, speaking as calmly as possible. "Hannah, you know I'm not someone who strictly adheres to the law or procedural justice. If someone I care about gets hurt, I have no problem with an eye for an eye. Do you understand? The law in America only protects the powerful." Jack didn't become a law enforcer to serve the elite. As someone who had established his worldview in a previous life, the system and his job as an LAPD officer were merely tools for him to improve his skills and quality of life. Jack wasn't a saint like John. Even John had his own principles of justice. Moreover, once his skills improved, he could always move on to a new place. He had already checked the LAPD internal system. There really was an intelligence unit leader in Chicago named Hank Voight. The world of American TV shows wasn't black and white. Worst case, he could become a dirty cop. Would the system not recognize him then? Hannah stayed silent, holding Jack's right hand and pressing her cheek against his palm. Feeling the dampness in his hand, Jack slowly pulled over to the side of the road, turning to look at her seriously. "Hey, Hannah, you're the smartest and strongest girl I've ever met. Maybe the time isn't right now, but I believe that when you open up to me, I won't let you down." Hannah still didn't speak, only slowly closing her eyes, her long eyelashes wet with tears. The atmosphere had built up to this point, so Jack had no choice but to lean in for a kiss. Just as his lips touched her soft ones, she suddenly burst into laughter. "So, Zoe has already opened up to you, huh? Hey. Are you messing with me? That joke isn't funny at all." Jack was a bit angry, or rather, trying to hide his embarrassment with anger. He still wasn't used to the casual approach Americans had towards relationships. How to handle the complex relationships among the four of them had been troubling him for days. "You know, you're really cute when you're angry," Hannah said, pressing Jack's hand to her cheek. "It's not what you think. Give me some time, and I'll tell you everything about my past. But before that, you have to promise me one thing." "What condition?" Jack raised an eyebrow. As long as it wasn't something too revealing, they could still be friends. "While we're practicing Krav Maga, you're not allowed to fight back." You've threatened to spank me too many times already." Feeling a huge sense of relief, Jack restarted the car and weakly replied, "Yes, ma'am, my landlady." When everyone returned to the police station after their administrative leave, they were met with cheers. Of course, Jack sensed more relief at not having to work overtime every day. Losing so many daytime patrol officers had stretched the Wilshire station's resources thin, even with support from other districts. The report from the district attorney confirmed the legality of their gunfire during the Bronson Tower incident. Lucy earned the right to choose a short-sleeve uniform for her exemplary performance in delivering a baby in a crisis. Bishop, confirmed to join the ATF after recovery, left the detective position open for Angela, who earned the detective qualification and would officially transfer after 6 months of training. Hannah and Tim were both promoted 1 rank. Jack gained the most. His heroic actions were reported to headquarters, earning him a special commendation and shortening his probation to 3 months. In 2 weeks, Jack would officially be an LAPD officer. This is well-deserved. If you weren't still a rookie, they might have awarded you a life-saving medal. Captain Gray, the typically stern-faced officer, praised Jack during the briefing. The next 2 weeks were peaceful. Jack smoothly completed his rookie evaluation and became an official LAPD officer. The system rewarded him with a substantial amount of experience, granting him 5 gold coins, enough to upgrade any proficient skill to mastery. He hadn't decided which skill to enhance yet, preferring to save it for later. John, recovering from his injury, and Lucy, still in her probation period, were a bit jealous as they congratulated Jack. Having learned to adopt an American mindset, Jack didn't pretend to be modest and boasted a bit in front of them. He overdid it, and to soothe their wounded egos, he had to promise to cook them another feast. Chapter 27, Carla. Jack was unexpectedly paired with Hannah as her partner, which left the entire precinct stunned. Everyone was aware of Hannah's quirks and couldn't understand why Jack was the exception. Some even maliciously spread rumors that Jack might be gay. Jack didn't care about these rumors, he was more troubled by Zoe avoiding him. Since that night at the hospital, Zoe had treated him like air in public and came up with various excuses to avoid private contact, as if she had wronged him in some way. With no other options, Jack finally called Maureen one day and arranged to meet her the next evening. "So, you're ditching me for dinner and training tomorrow night to see your glamorous psychologist?" Hannah, driving the patrol car, sounded like a jealous wife. "Didn't Zoe say she found the cause of your post-shooting trauma? You just need to." Jack's gaze lingered on Hannah's profile. "So, Zoe didn't keep anything from you, did she? She told you everything." Realizing she had slipped up, Hannah stuttered, blushing from her ears to her neck. "I don't know anything." "Go ask your psychologist, she's the mastermind." "Mastermind? You 3 are plotting behind my back." "Hannah, watch out." Jack's peripheral vision caught a figure suddenly appearing in front of the patrol car. He quickly shouted a warning. Hannah snapped back to attention and slammed on the brakes, but it was too late. Despite the patrol car not moving very fast, there was a dull thud as they hit someone. They hurried out to find a blonde girl in an oversized men's t-shirt lying unconscious on the ground. Hannah checked the girl's head injury while Jack noticed something was off. The girl wore a half-open handcuff on her left wrist, and under the oversized t-shirt, she had only a pair of panties. Most tellingly, she was barefoot, with her feet cut by small stones, indicating she had been running desperately. Signaling Hannah to take note of these details, Jack picked up the radio. "Car 7A26 reporting a possible vehicle collision. Please dispatch an ambulance." While waiting for the ambulance, the girl regained consciousness and clutched Hannah's arm, sobbing, "Save Emma, please save Emma. She can't hold on much longer." Hannah tried to calm her down. "We're police officers. You're safe now. Tell us what happened." "Who is Emma?" "I was kidnapped. Emma is the girl who was with me. Please, you have to save her. He'll kill her when he finds out I escaped." The girl's fear was palpable, and Jack's frown deepened. "What's your name? Do you remember where you escaped from?" "My name is Carla Robinson. I don't recognize this neighborhood. I ran for about half an hour. No one would help me, so I kept running. That man has guns, many guns. I didn't dare fight back. Whenever I disobeyed, he would hit Emma. Please, help her. He'll kill her if he finds out I escaped. After placing Carla in the arriving ambulance, Jack and Hannah followed in their patrol car to the central hospital. There, they met John's old classmate, Dr. Garris, the new head of the emergency department. The patient has a minor concussion from the head injury and some scrapes on her hands and feet. Other than being emotionally unstable, she's fine, Dr. Garris informed them after a brief greeting. So, we can take a statement from her. It won't take long. We suspect she was kidnapped. Have you done a sexual assault exam? Hannah asked urgently. Dr. Garris shook her head. The exam requires consent from her guardian. We've notified her family, who are on their way. You can speak to her briefly before they arrive. Entering the hospital room, Jack saw Carla lying on the bed, her forehead bandaged. She had thick blonde hair, big blue eyes, a cute nose, and delicate lips, revealing a white, neat set of teeth, clearly a girl from a well-to-do white family. Given her ordeal, Jack let Hannah take the lead in questioning. Hello, Carla. I'm Officer Hannah, and this is my partner Jack, Hannah said gently, holding the girl's hand and speaking softly. Carla was much calmer than before. Though still showing signs of panic, her speech was now clear and coherent. The man who kidnapped me is a strong, middle-aged white guy. About 2 weeks ago, he held me at gunpoint in front of my friend's house and forced me into a large plastic box in the back of his car. As Carla spoke rapidly, Jack jotted down notes in his notebook. He took me to his basement, where there was another kidnapped girl, an African-American named Emma. He told us that if either of us tried to escape, he would kill us both. He always carried a gun, and neither of us dared to resist. During the day, he made me clean and do laundry. At this point, Carla began to cry, and Hannah held her close, gently stroking her back to comfort her. So, how did you manage to escape? Knowing they didn't have much time before Carla's family arrived and interrupted their questioning, Jack pressed for more information. I didn't dare resist and tried to comply with everything he asked. Emma said there was another girl before me who went through what Emma is going through now. That girl disappeared before he brought me in. Emma told me to find a way to escape, or I would face the same fate soon. So, I pretended to obey him for days. Last night, after he went to bed. He usually sleeps until noon. Early in the morning, I quietly unscrewed the bed frame bolts to avoid making any noise and escaped barefoot. This case is inspired by The Girl Who Escaped, which seems to be based on a true story. Chapter 28, Conflict. Hearing this, Jack couldn't help but take notice. This little girl was extraordinary. Not only was she calm and composed, but she also had a resilient and tenacious personality. Even in a place like the USA, not many adults could achieve what she did. Do you have any impression of where he lives? Hannah asked. Carla nodded. I've been trying to remember details about the house. I know he has a girlfriend named Winnie. They occasionally call each other, and I heard them planning to go to Disneyland on the 20th. He wrote the hotel's name on the calendar. Oh, and I also remembered his family doctor's name and phone number, Greg Noblin, number 80355566714. But I was too scared when I escaped, I didn't dare to stay. I don't recognize that neighborhood. I only remember it was a gray bungalow with a red brick roof. I didn't see the house number. I was so terrified, constantly worried he'd find and shoot me. I just kept running. I'm sorry, sob. It's okay, dear. You've done incredibly well. You're an amazing girl, you know that. Hannah hugged Carla and comforted her gently while exchanging a glance with Jack. Jack nodded, his face serious, indicating he had recorded these details. Suddenly, the door to the hospital room was thrown open, and a furious shout came from outside, "Stay away from my daughter, you damn cops." A well-dressed middle-aged couple burst into the room. The blonde middle-aged woman, who bore some resemblance to Carla, rushed to her daughter, hugging her and crying. The gray-haired father, however, was furious, pointing at the door and yelling at Jack and Hannah, "Get out of here. We don't need you damn cops here. Until my lawyer arrives, you have no right to harass my daughter." Hannah tried to calm him down. "Sir, please, we just want to help Carla. There's another girl in danger. We need clues to find the kidnapper as soon as possible. But the men continued to roar. Clues? Now you care about clues. When we first came to you, giving you so many clues and begging for your help, you didn't even issue an Amber Alert. And now my daughter has been ruined, she's lost her innocence. He even turned to scold his daughter. Damn it, Carla, I warned you to stay away from those slutty friends of yours. Look at you now. Before he could finish, Jack grabbed him by the throat, dragging him out of the room and pinning him against the wall. Staring into his eyes, Jack spoke slowly and deliberately. Sir, I understand your feelings, but Carla is a smart, brave girl. She's been doing everything she can to stay alive, just to see her family again. I don't care if you're from some conservative Catholic family valuing damn chastity, but she's still your daughter. If I hear you insult her again, don't blame me for what I might do. The middle-aged man, nearly as tall and burly as Jack, was momentarily stunned, unsure how to react. Hannah stood by, watching coldly, ready to step in if necessary. Jack, that's enough. Commissioner Gray arrived with two unfamiliar detectives, followed by Dr. Garrick, who had seen everything. He only called out due to his position. Dr. Garrick, his face frosty, spoke sharply, clearly displeased with the father's earlier comments. Mr. Robinson, I warn you, this is a hospital. If you continue to cause a scene, I'll have security throw you out. And refrain from making any inappropriate remarks that might affect my patient's emotions. This child has endured inhumane abuse, but she has not. Realizing his slip, Dr. Garrick paused before continuing. What she needs most now is her family's love, not your unreasonable accusations. Commissioner Gray also looked displeased, his gaze filled with disdain as he addressed the father. Mr. Robinson, I have a daughter your age. If this happened to me, I'd silently support her through this difficult time. He paused before adding, there's another set of parents outside, even more desperate than you. Their daughter is still missing. If you have any sense left, you'll cooperate with the police to find that monster. You seem like a respectable businessman, you surely want this resolved quickly, without attracting media attention, right? Jack silently praised the commissioner for his skilled approach, simultaneously moralizing and subtly threatening. As he thought this, he noticed something missing from Dr. Garrick's right hand, realizing the ring was gone. Indeed, Mr. Robinson struggled to speak but said nothing more. Meanwhile, Mrs. Robinson, wiping her swollen eyes, stepped out to defuse the situation. I'm sorry, everyone. My husband was just too emotional. We only have Carla, and we reported her missing as soon as it happened. But the two detectives behind you refused to investigate further, citing a lack of eyewitnesses. They claimed teenagers often run away. So please understand my husband's outburst. Mrs. Robinson was clearly more tactful, expressing her dissatisfaction without being rude and shifting the blame to the newly arrived detectives. Everyone fell silent. Dr. Garrick led the couple back into the room, while Commissioner Gray introduced the two detectives to his subordinates. These are Detectives Mota and Peggy from the Major Crimes Unit. Detective Mota was a short, stocky, balding white man with graying hair and a small mustache. His partner, Detective Peggy, was a mixed-race woman with a voluminous afro. Hannah eagerly inquired, did you find out the identity of the girl named Emma? Detective Mota, clearly embarrassed by Mrs. Robinson's earlier remarks, retorted mockingly to Commissioner Gray, pointing at Hannah and Jack. Are you just going to let your officers criticize our work? Commissioner Gray, protective of his subordinates, shot back. I think they're doing their job well. If you'd done yours properly, maybe that child wouldn't have suffered for so long. Feeling the tension, Detective Peggy quickly changed the subject. Good news, the book started to appear intermittently on the new book charts yesterday. Bad news, it's a fierce competition, fluctuating on and off the charts. Chapter 29, The So-Called Amber Alert. Emma Christina, 19 years old, a college student, went missing a month ago. Her dorm mate reported it to the police 3 weeks ago. The case was filed, but there's been no progress. Did the victim disclose the name of her captor? Hannah shook her head. The victim didn't know where she was being held. After escaping, she kept running out of fear until she collapsed from exhaustion. Until you ran her over with your car. Detective Mota continued to press, his tone insufferably snide. Jack quickly grabbed Hannah's arm to prevent her from reacting impulsively. It was an accident. No one along the way was willing to help this poor child. When she saw the police car, her first instinct was to run towards it for help. She collapsed in front of it because she was utterly exhausted. Jack's tone was firm, his disdain for this detective growing. Perhaps, aside from those he knew from past cases, Detective Mota was a true representation of the average cop in the USA. Detective Peggy, possibly finding the young, handsome Jack more agreeable, also stepped in to stop her partner's inappropriate comments. "We'll expedite the search for the kidnapper's residence. Did you gather any clues just now?" Hannah glanced at Commissioner Gray beside her, whispered a few words to him, then nodded to Jack. Jack handed over his notebook. "These are some details provided by the victim. This child is very calm and rational. Let us know if there's anything else you need us to do. Conduct a neighborhood sweep while we confirm the exact address." "That's settled," Commissioner Gray interjected. "I'll assign 3 patrol cars to conduct an overnight sweep, including you and Hannah, Jack." "Understood. Jack, let's go." Hannah turned to leave without a second thought, clearly at the end of her patience with the bald, overweight detective. "Let's eat something. It's already afternoon, and you need to replenish your energy." It was nearing 3 p.m. Jack handed a heated lunchbox to Hannah in the car, containing soup dumplings he had made the night before. Hannah put down the radio, carefully bit into the dumpling's skin, sipped the delicious broth, found it not too hot, and then quickly devoured the whole thing, letting out a satisfied sigh. "I've asked Tim to use his connections at the Detective Bureau to help locate the suspect's address. Commissioner Gray has also reported the situation. Once we have a concrete address, we won't have to wait for the Major Crimes Unit, the court will send the search warrant directly to us." Jack, also starving, grabbed a dumpling and ate it in one bite. Since his physical training intensity increased after his physique broke through 20, so did his appetite. "I have a question. Why doesn't the Major Crimes Unit take these missing minor cases seriously?" Hannah, while wolfing down her food, answered, "Do you know how many people go missing in this country every year? Nearly 100,000. As of last year, about 800,000 cases had no progress after being filed, with minor cases being particularly serious." Seeing Jack's shocked and incredulous expression, she continued, "In densely populated areas like Los Angeles, children go missing almost every day. But how many times have you heard an Amber Alert? The conditions for issuing an Amber Alert are extremely strict. For a case like Carla's, as long as that bald detective insists there's insufficient evidence, it's impossible to issue one." "Okay, never mind," Jack thought to himself, sympathizing with the plight of people in the USA as he competed with Hannah for the remaining dumplings. "But I don't get it. Carla was running barefoot on the street for her life, and no one even noticed." Hannah shrugged, pointing to several eccentrically dressed pedestrians on the street. "This is L.A." Jack still felt uneasy but decided not to pursue the matter further. Maybe kidnapping was just a daily occurrence in this country, or perhaps in this world. At that moment, Tim's voice came through the radio. "Hannah, Jack, we found the suspect's identity and address. Angus Lucius, male, 47, former Marine, lives at 2699 Pickford Street. John and Angela are on their way from the station with the search warrant." Hannah swallowed her food, picked up the radio, and responded, "That's about 3 blocks from where we found the victim. We're the closest, we'll arrive in 5 minutes." Jack quickly tossed the lunchbox into the trunk, got into the driver's seat, started the police car, and sped towards the destination with the siren blaring. 3 minutes later, Jack turned off the siren, slowed the car to a normal patrol speed, turned the corner, and slowly drove down Pickford Street. Hannah checked the map while inspecting the surrounding houses. Gray bungalow with a red brick roof. "This is the place." Jack followed Hannah's directions and saw the house with its windows and doors tightly shut, the driveway empty. A sense of foreboding arose, they might be too late. In less than 10 minutes, Tim and Lucy's patrol car arrived, followed by John and Angela with the search warrant. As usual, Tim took charge. "Angela and John, go around the back. Lucy and I will cover the sides. Hannah and Jack, breach from the front. Be careful, everyone." Everyone nodded. Based on the victim's description, the suspect was armed. They all carried rifles. Jack held an Ithaca 12 shotgun loaded with a special breaching round. The others carried M16s, wary of the suspect taking hostages. At Hannah's shout, "LAPD, open up!" Jack blasted the lock off, and Hannah kicked the door open. They entered one by one, clearing each room. Clear. 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 Jack's premonition was right. Angus Lucius had fled after Carla escaped, leaving everything behind. Tim found the basement entrance, but it was empty except for a foul smell. "Hey, guys, come here. Look what I found." John's voice came from the bedroom. Jack walked in and saw an open chest containing various women's accessories and undergarments. Tim switched his flashlight to UV mode. Under the UV light, stains from bodily fluids were clearly visible on the underwear. These undergarments are in several sizes. "There are more victims," Lucy exclaimed. Everyone's face turned grim, especially the female officers, Angela and Hannah. Tim scanned the room and nodded at Jack. "Jack, come with me to the backyard. The rest of you keep searching for clues. We need to find the suspect's whereabouts quickly. Emma might not have much time. If the suspect feels safe, he might kill her." Chapter 30, The Serial Killer Must Die. In the chaotic backyard, Tim tossed a shovel to Jack and pointed to several patches of ground where the soil was darker and weeds grew more densely. "Carefully dig those areas up and take a look." Jack took the shovel, already having a hunch about what he might find. After digging less than half a meter down, he indeed noticed something unusual. Carefully removing the top layer of soil, he uncovered a highly decomposed body, accompanied by a foul stench. "Fucking bastard," Jack muttered in Chinese, stopping his actions. Tim also halted his digging. He had discovered another body, this one already reduced to bones. Now it's up to forensics. There are at least 4 bodies buried here. They have their work cut out for them. Jack couldn't read any emotion on Tim's poker face, but the anger in his eyes was unmistakable. "Jack, can I trust you?" Tim turned off their body cams before speaking. Jack felt relieved. This was the TV drama world he was familiar with, where things weren't always black and white. "Actually, I was just about to ask you the same thing. I don't believe in letting him rot in prison. I believe in God's judgment." Tim seemed pleased with Jack's answer and continued, "Then let's send him to meet God. This bastard has disgraced the Marines." As a retired Marine, Tim was deeply enraged. "Let's bring John in. He's not a stubborn saint, just lacking the right opportunity." "I don't want to see him harmed by his own kindness someday," Jack suggested. Tim hesitated. "Does he know when to keep his mouth shut? I still have 15 years to go before I can collect my full pension." "Let's talk to him and find out," Jack shrugged, a gesture he was becoming more adept at. They walked back into the house, finding the others gathered around a photo Hannah was holding. Jack cleared his throat to get their attention. "We found at least 4 unidentified bodies buried in the backyard." "Fuck." Angela, the most hot-tempered of the group, spat out a string of expletives. Seeing the 2 rookies' confused looks, Tim signaled everyone to turn off their body cams before explaining. "This means that even if we catch that bastard, the DA might strike a deal to avoid the death penalty in exchange for identifying the victims." Jack noticed John's eyes widen in disbelief, as if he couldn't comprehend what Tim was saying. Honestly, Jack himself didn't fully understand the quirks of plea bargaining in the USA. Angela explained, although California hasn't abolished the death penalty, the Green River Killer avoided execution by making such a deal. Notorious grim sleeper Lonnie Franklin was sentenced to death but never executed, dying of natural causes in prison. Tim, sensing the need to stoke the group's anger further, added, "Then there's Richard Ramirez, the Night Stalker. Sentenced to death in 1989, he lived in prison until 2013, even getting married to a fan." Hannah tossed the photo to Tim and started to walk out, but Jack quickly grabbed her. Angela and Tim were testing the rookies' attitudes, not trying to upset Hannah further. "So, we just let this happen?" John looked shattered. Tim nodded. "If that bastard is smart, he won't give us the chance to kill him." Hannah struggled but couldn't break free. "I will never let him surrender," she hissed. Tim looked at the photo Hannah had thrown, showing a small cabin with a low mountain in the background. He examined it closely, unable to decipher anything. "What did you find?" John, clearly understanding the implications, spoke up. This is the south side of Baldwin Hills, on the edge of Kenneth Hahn State Park. Swallowing hard, he continued, I visited this area when I first arrived in Los Angeles. It's secluded. We suspect the suspect might be hiding here. Angela confirmed, I've already checked with the command center. The suspect does own a cabin in this area. Tim pocketed the photo, scanning the group. This conversation never happened. Jack, Hannah, you're coming with me. The rest of you stay here and wait for forensics. Hey! Angela protested. Why am I being left out? Don't you trust me? You're about to become a detective. Don't get yourself in trouble. Tim's stern look also silenced the eager Lucy, who reluctantly stepped back. Tim's unique form of care, even when it meant being the hardest on his colleagues. Jack released Hannah, keeping an eye on John, who seemed deep in thought. Take me along. I know the area, and I know what I'm doing, John said without hesitation. Then let's go. As they left the suspect's residence, Tim reported via radio, 7A-21, we're heading to Kenneth Hahn State Park to check the suspect Angus Lucius's cabin. Please mark it. 7A-26, will accompany. Please mark it. 30 minutes later, the two patrol cars were driving down a rough forest path, nearing their destination. Before getting out, Jack was concerned about Hannah's state. If he were to rate her anger level from 1 to 10, it had been at 6 after interviewing Carla and had skyrocketed to 10 after discovering more victims. Hannah, if you can't control your emotions, I'll have to tell Tim and leave you in the car. Jack looked seriously into her fiery blue eyes, feeling like he could be burned to a crisp by her gaze. He didn't want her to get hurt due to excessive anger. Not everyone could stay cool-headed when emotions ran high, unlike him. Hannah sniffed, leaned over, and buried her head in Jack's chest, taking a few deep breaths before sitting back. I'm fine. Tim won't let me act anyway. Just watch him, don't let anything go wrong. Chapter 31, Cunning and Crafty. Jack found Hannah's actions amusing and reached out to tuck the strand of hair sticking to her lips behind her ear, nodding slightly. Honestly, I'm curious about what Tim plans to do to avoid this little gadget. As he spoke, he turned on the body camera on his chest. 2 police cars turned off their engines and stopped at a corner more than 200 meters away from the cabin to avoid being discovered. The 4 officers, armed with long guns, crouched in the woods about 50 meters southeast of the cabin. This time, the shotgun was handed to Hannah, who would be responsible for breaking down the door. Just as Tim was about to order the advance, the cabin door suddenly opened. A burly white man, shirtless with tattooed arms, came out holding an axe in his right hand while adjusting his belt with his left hand, walking unsteadily. As the door opened, faint sounds of a girl's crying and pleading could be heard from inside. Tim took out a small telescope. Confirmed suspect Angus Lucius. There's a sawed-off Remington shotgun stuck to his back and a handgun at his waist. The suspect, Lucius, turned to the back of the cabin with his axe, disappearing from their sight. Soon, the sound of chopping wood came from behind the cabin. Tim lowered the volume on his walkie-talkie and reported to the command center, we've located the suspect Angus Lucius in Kenneth Hahn State Park. Location marked. Requesting immediate backup. The suspect is heavily armed and extremely dangerous. There are hostages inside. We may need an ambulance. Then he turned around and whispered, the suspect and hostages are separated. Now is a good chance. Jack and I will go around the back to deal with the suspect. John and Hannah, go inside to secure the hostages. The other 3 nodded, following Tim as they crouched towards the cabin. When the 4 reached the cabin's entrance, Tim signaled John and Hannah to go inside. Then he pressed against the wooden wall, with his M16 shouldered, ready to move to the back. Following behind, Jack held his breath, sensing something was off. His heightened senses, after recently increasing his mental power, detected that the chopping sound had abruptly stopped. Jack's mind tensed. Before he could warn Tim, an axe struck the barrel of Tim's M16 as he rounded the corner. Tim reacted swiftly. Almost simultaneously with losing his grip on the rifle, he lunged forward, grappling with Lucius. Jack, ready to advance and demand the suspect's surrender, didn't expect Lucius to kick Tim towards him after realizing there was more than one opponent. Lucius then turned and fled. As he ran, Lucius drew the Remington from his back, firing wildly at the two officers. After emptying the rounds, he discarded the gun and dashed into the dense forest. Jack reacted quickly, raising his gun and grabbing Tim's tactical vest with his left hand as Tim, having been kicked, blocked his line of fire. Seeing Lucius draw the Remington, Jack twisted his body, pulling Tim to the cabin's corner. They both took cover just as the shotgun's pellets shattered the cabin's wooden corner, sending splinters flying. "You can let go now," Tim groaned in pain, almost crushed against the cabin wall by Jack's brute strength. Turning around, they locked eyes. They simultaneously realized their awkward position, resembling a cabin scene, and in unison said, "Don't tell anyone about this." From a cabin window, Hannah peeked out, saw the scene, and couldn't help but laugh. "Need help?" "No, we'll pursue the suspect. You protect the hostages and wait for backup." Tim, frustrated, drew his handgun. Whether intentionally or not, his elbow brushed hard against Jack's chest, knocking off his body camera. Jack hesitated but didn't pick it up. Looking at Tim's chest, he noticed that Tim's body camera had also fallen off, possibly during their scuffle or for some other reason. Truly cunning. Lesson learned. Following Tim into the forest, Jack regretted bringing the M16. Though he had the stamina to carry Hannah and still keep pace within a few kilometers, a rifle was cumbersome in the woods. Jack slung the M16 over his shoulder, drew his Glock, and focused on the trampled branches and the sounds around him. After less than 10 minutes of pursuit, Tim suddenly stopped, raising his handgun and shouting, "Hands up, Lucius. You have nowhere to run." Jack slipped behind a large tree on the right, aiming at a figure about 10 meters ahead. Before them was a low cliff with a small stream trickling down, forming a misty pool below. The suspect, Lucius, stood with his back to them, staring blankly. He dropped his M1911 at his feet, turned around with a creepy smile, and knelt, hands behind his head. Tim held his position, signaling Jack to watch for incoming threats. Jack stepped back into the underbrush, keeping his gun trained on Lucius and his senses alert. Seeing Tim's icy stare and unwavering aim, Lucius's smile faltered. Noticing Jack's disappearance, his expression turned frantic. "I dropped my gun. What do you want?" Tim's voice was as cold as his gaze, his mouth curling into a cruel smirk. "Pick up your gun, Private Angus Lucius." Lucius panicked, waving his hands frantically. "No, you can't do this. I dropped my gun. Arrest me. You're a cop." Tim's furious shout cut him off. "We were both proud Marines once. Your actions disgrace our honor. Now pick up your weapon, soldier." Lucius's eyes darted to the gun at his feet, his body trembling. "No, please. I have PTSD. I can't." "You can't do this." Tim remained unmoved, his fury intensifying at Lucius's cowardice. "You have two choices, pick up that gun and shoot yourself, or I'll shoot you dead." With that, he spat on the ground. Lucius, terrified, began to cry, trembling as he reached for the gun. Chapter 32, The Story of the Yellow Emperor. Jack carefully observed Lucius's actions, sensing a touch of theatrical exaggeration in his behavior. Sure enough, Lucius, crying and trembling, held the gun to his head under Tim's pressure. But just as he was about to pull the trigger, he suddenly turned the gun towards Tim. 3 gunshots rang out almost simultaneously. Lucius fell backward, a bullet hole in his forehead and chest, contaminating the clear pool with his blood. A bullet hole appeared in the muddy ground near Tim's feet, wisps of smoke rising from it. Jack emerged from the bushes, shaking his head. After working only a few days, he would need another vacation. If not for worrying that Tim might get too reckless, he wouldn't have fired that shot. It seemed he would have to move up his appointment with the psychologist, Maureen, to tonight. After processing the scene and returning to the station to complete the report, it was already past 8 p.m. Knowing Jack's situation, the considerate Hannah took over the remaining paperwork, telling him to leave early. Jack didn't hesitate. Although today wasn't too dangerous, he had been in a heightened state of alert since the suspect's escape. After a call with Maureen, he drove to South Pasadena, following the address she sent. Jack's second-hand Chevrolet, though only a 1.0-liter engine, was well-maintained and had no minor issues despite being a few months old. It suited his current financial situation. He reached the destination in less than 30 minutes via the 110 Harbor Freeway. This was an old, well-established white neighborhood in northeast Los Angeles, with excellent environment and top-notch security. Jack was familiar with the area as Zoe also lived in this community. After parking, Jack grabbed a bottle of wine he had bought for $120 and walked briskly to the doorbell. The door opened, revealing Maureen in a pink silk nightgown. Without her signature gold-rimmed glasses, her slightly nearsighted eyes seemed misty, reminiscent of a fox. Kicking the door shut behind him, Jack adopted a dominant demeanor, wasting no time before pressing Maureen against the wall for a deep kiss. Tonight, he would reclaim his dignity. Half an hour later, exhausted from her poor stamina despite her eagerness, Jack looked at her disdainfully and slapped her perfect rear, leaving a mark. He practiced Krav Maga with Hannah for at least 2 hours a day and occasionally trained in self-defense with Zoe for an hour. How could a mere half hour of yoga tire Maureen out so much? No wonder Zoe said she couldn't leave you. Maureen's voice, hoarse from her earlier vocal protests, sounded even more alluring. Don't trivialize our relationship. Before you came along, we were each other's only one. Jack's expression was righteous. Oh, poor little Hannah. Maureen laughed heartily. Jack snorted, lifting her onto his lap. I wanted to ask you, what advice did you give them? What are you all plotting behind my back? Maureen, feeling the pressure from Jack's intense stance, quickly relented. Let me catch my breath. It was a collective decision, they can't blame me alone. Explain clearly. Jack loosened his grip slightly, and Maureen's eyes were close to tears. You know Zoe's family background, right? Jack shook his head. Zoe had only briefly mentioned her parents, giving him the impression of a tight-knit, middle-class family. Seeing Maureen had calmed down, he set her aside, motioning for her to speak. Under the pressure, Maureen confessed, her voice slightly muffled. The Anderson name is one of California's oldest political families, dating back to the Republic era. The family members span both parties. Zoe's grandfather, Henry Anderson, served 2 terms as a state senator. Although Zoe's father has always been a lawyer, her grandfather had planned her political career once she came of age. This was Zoe's promise to her family. Next year, she will run for LA City Council, marking the start of her political career. Jack's mind was boggled. He had no concept of political dynasties. In his past life, he was only a keyboard warrior with limited understanding of American politics, knowing merely about the bicameral Congress. So, what does Zoe's political career have to do with us? He was confused. As a poor boy, he was indeed mismatched with a political family's heiress. But Zoe had never hinted at marriage plans with him. It was unlikely she discussed him with her family. Could he be facing a different version of, don't underestimate the poor youth? Maureen, exasperated, coughed. In short, Zoe turned down a family-arranged marriage because of you, and came out as bisexual with me to gain a politically correct label. This way, if your relationship with her draws attention, she can easily explain it away, saying I'm bisexual and having an affair with you. Jack's eyes widened. Such a scheme. It meant frequent threesomes. Though it sounded appealing, he maintained a facade of concern. Isn't that too much of a sacrifice for you? While secretly pleased, he feigned concern. Yes, I not only have to be Zoe's campaign manager but also endure your bullying. It's too much. Maureen covered her mouth, rushing to the bathroom. Jack scratched his head. If Maureen was part of their circle, he owed her some benefits. He stood, entered the bathroom, and carried her out, grabbing the bottle of wine. You love ancient Chinese culture. Have you heard the story of the Yellow Emperor and his 3,000 concubines? My great-grandfather was a doctor for a Chinese emperor. An hour later, Maureen sat up, lightly caressing her skin with an incredulous expression. My God, I've never felt this good. It's amazing. You should be a cosmetic doctor. Those old women in Beverly Hills would go crazy for you. Jack raised a finger to his lips. Shoo, it's an ancient Chinese secret. Only true union between a man and woman can activate the magic. Chapter 33, Reunion. Maureen's gaze became dreamy as she puckered her red lips for a wet kiss. No wonder Zoe almost broke her promise to her family because of you. You're practically the Helen of Troy. Jack chuckled, thinking to himself how outlandish the comparison was, but it sparked a doubt in his mind. Was Zoe's unexpected death in the original storyline truly just due to an actor leaving and the writers hastily crafting an accident? Or had the world's reenactment added other reasons? He reminded himself to pay more attention to the police department's situation in the coming days. Besides preventing Zoe's accident, he also had to avoid any unforeseen complications. The next day, Jack and Hannah arranged a dinner gathering with everyone. They had previously promised to treat the rookies, John and Lucy, to a big meal and invited Tim and Angela as well. The case of the serial killer, Angus Lucius, was handled discreetly. An internal gag order was issued within the police department, and the city hall struck a deal with major media outlets to suppress related reports to avoid public panic. Because the case was resolved quickly, few people knew the details. Even if fragments of the story leaked online, it wouldn't cause much of a stir. The only downside was that the district attorney's office, under scrutiny from higher-ups, worked so efficiently that Tim and Jack only received 3 days of administrative leave for the shooting. Jack splurged on this gathering, not letting Hannah spend any money. He spent nearly $400 on ingredients, specifically buying quality items from a Chinese supermarket. Besides the highly requested braised pork trotters in rock sugar, he also made squirrel fish, salt-baked chicken, and other hearty dishes. At 7 p.m., everyone arrived, and Jack finally finished his kitchen work. Satisfied, he opened the system to find a notification: "Congratulations, host. Your cooking skill, proficient, has advanced to cooking skill, expert, through self-study." Now, besides his handgun shooting skills, he had a second expert-level skill. Although cooking didn't directly aid his police career, enjoying a meal with friends after a case was the best way to relax and dispel negative emotions. Tim brought a bottle of his favorite Gordon's gin for everyone to taste. Gin, also known as juniper berry wine, was one of America's favorite spirits. As they ate and chatted, the topic inevitably circled back to the serial murder case. Hannah pursed her lips. "Do you know what happened after you left last night?" The 2 detectives from Major Crimes came to Zoe and complained, saying we should have notified them before entering the suspect's residence. Angela sneered. Captain Anderson wouldn't placate those babies. The case wasn't formally handed over to Major Crimes, so they had no grounds to complain. Only losers whine about not getting credit. Hannah nodded. Zoe kicked them out of her office and told them if they had taken the Carla family's report seriously, those 2 girls wouldn't have suffered so much. That bald detective, Mota, was livid. "So, is that the end of it?" Jack's question was directed at Tim, hinting at the missing body cams during their chase. Only they knew what had really happened. Since the higher-ups have spoken, of course, it's the end. The culprit is dead, and no one will care about the details, right? Tim responded nonchalantly. Dr. Gallus said that girl, Emma, would need at least 3 months to fully recover. Letting that beast die so easily was too good for him. Hannah still felt indignant. The case had touched a sore spot in her heart. Jack clinked his glass with Tim's and downed the rest of his drink. "All right, Hannah, we're just cops, not gods. We've done what we could. Let's talk about something happier. It's gossip time." John grinned mischievously. "I was in Captain Gray's office when someone came in, mentioning he's considering taking the sergeant exam." Angela, enjoying her meal, froze and struggled to swallow her food, looking incredulously at Tim. He was the only one qualified among them. "No way, damn Tim. When I was competing with Bishop for detective, you mocked us." She mimicked Tim's usual frown and tone. "I don't understand why you 2 want to leave the patrol so badly. Being a patrol officer is more fun." Then she slapped Tim on the shoulder. "Huh? You're giving up your fun now." Tim didn't bat an eye. "I just don't want to be bossed around by you every day when you become a detective. I joined the force 2 years before you." Angela, still annoyed, pointed at him threateningly. "You better pray you pass the sergeant exam on the first try. If I become a detective first, I'll have you fetch coffee on every case." Tim countered. "Angela, why don't you tell us about your thing with that rich lawyer?" Everyone turned to look at Angela, including Lucy, who had been wholly absorbed in the food. Jack noticed Angela blushing, rare for her, and stammering. "We just went on a few dates. Can't I have some private life?" Lucy, wide-eyed, was in disbelief. You mean the lawyer you saved from a thief, who then tried to complain about your excessive force? Jack raised his hand. I was there. They were arguing fiercely, and Angela even threatened to slap him. Wow. The onlookers wore expressions of amusement. Wesley later apologized. One of my brothers was getting married, and if I didn't find a date, my mom would set me up with the best man all night. So? They all asked in unison. The best man smelled like cat litter, and I don't think he even owns a cat. Angela smiled sweetly. Besides, Wesley is handsome and very gentlemanly when he apologized. Hannah suddenly seemed to have a realization and slapped her forehead, her voice rising in excitement. So that's why you asked about living with Jack today. Oh my God, you're planning to move in together and didn't tell me. Aren't we best friends anymore? Chapter 34, The Divine Book of Traversing. Dinner time was spent with everyone gossiping, while Angela pretended to console the feigning distressed Hannah. Attention, everyone. Before the party ended, John stood up, tapping his spoon lightly against a glass to indicate he wanted to speak. Everyone, I have a suggestion. How about we have a regular gathering once a month? The location can rotate among us, we can hire Jack as our chef, and anyone else confident in their cooking skills can join in. The rest of us can split the cost of the ingredients. What do you think? Agreed. The group raised their glasses and cheered. Jack felt that his cooking skills might be the first skill he could master without relying on additional points. Advancing from proficiency to mastery required 10 gold coins. Given his current rate of experience gain, he wasn't sure if he could master handgun shooting by the time he made detective. He no longer needed to practice shooting daily. After reaching proficiency with handguns, shooting at the range didn't improve his skills much. To advance further, he likely needed the intensity of SWAT training. As a cop, his level of handgun proficiency was more than adequate. Jack could confidently say that no one in the LAPD, including the SWAT team, could outshoot him. As for rifle shooting, it wasn't that Jack didn't want to practice, he simply couldn't afford it. Regular shooting ranges had limited effects on skill improvement. Professional ranges and coaches from shooting clubs were beyond his financial reach. Over the past few months, he'd saved up $2,000. For a middle-aged man from Ceres, this amount was unsettlingly low. Though he had backup plans, it wasn't time to use them yet. His dream was to own a small house like Hannah, nothing too big, just enough for a bedroom that could fit a queen-size bed and a perfect Chinese kitchen. A bathroom with a double bathtub was a must. The house needed a backyard large enough for a gym set and martial arts practice posts. A pool was optional, but growing some fruits and vegetables was essential. These dreams required a lot of money. Relying solely on the meager salary of the LAPD, Jack would have to look forward to the full pension after 25 years of service like Captain Gray. Taking out loans was out of the question. His friends, Tim and John, were perfect examples. Despite seeming well off with houses and cars, they could barely scrape together $500 at the end of the year, with most of their income going to bank payments. Maybe true Americans were used to this lifestyle, but for Jack, a middle-aged man from Ceres, living one paycheck away from homelessness was too risky. After tidying up the living room and kitchen, Jack went to the bathroom to wash off the cooking grease. When he opened the door, he found Hannah holding a large gift box. A gift to congratulate you on officially becoming an LAPD officer. What's inside? Jack took the box, feeling its weight. Could she have bought him a gun? You always complain about how expensive English textbooks are. I noticed you often buy Chinese reference books, so I went to Chinatown and bought a few. The shopkeeper said these were very useful. Jack's smile froze. This silly girl couldn't read a single Chinese character. Had she been conned? He often saw Americans on the streets with bizarre Chinese tattoos that made him facepalm. Opening the wrapping paper, the top book was indeed a very useful tool, Xinhua Dictionary, the 8th edition, still in good condition. Not wanting to upset Hannah, Jack resisted the urge to roll his eyes and nodded seriously. It is a very useful tool. What's this? Oh my God. Jack's face lit up as he flipped to the next book. He couldn't help but curse in his native language. Ignoring Hannah's confused look, he kept flipping, his smile growing wider and more excited. The second book was titled The Friend of Military and Civilian Talents, and the third was a continuation of the same title with a subtitle in parentheses. Are these books useful? Hannah asked, puzzled by his silence. Of course, they're extremely useful. Jack hugged Hannah and spun her around, giving her a quick kiss on the lips. Thank you so much, Hannah. You're my lucky charm. Hannah had never seen Jack so excited. Though she didn't fully understand, she was happy too, her face flushing. Since you got injured, you haven't trained with me. Can we continue tonight? Sure, let me put away your gift first. Jack took the heavy books to the attic, placing the Chinois dictionary on the shelf. It would likely just be for show. He put the 2 volumes of The Friend of Military and Civilian Talents on his bedside table. These essential books for traversers, though more suited for ancient times, were invaluable for someone with his system. They contained a wealth of practical knowledge, enough to add a series of beginner skills to his system panel. Previously, by reading basic psychology textbooks, Jack had gained entry-level psychology skills. This kind of practical encyclopedia was incredibly useful. After changing into tight sportswear, Jack went downstairs and entered Hannah's training room, a space without floorboards, just a thin layer of padding. The walls were similarly padded, with a training dummy and a punching bag in one corner. He was curious to see if his combat skills had improved after his physique surpassed 20. When his perception had surpassed 20, he could clearly sense his body lagging behind his mind during sparring with Hannah. When he focused during a fight, he could keenly observe his opponent's gaze, shoulder movements, and muscle exertions to predict their intentions. But his body couldn't keep up with his mind, like playing a high-ping online game. After his physique surpassed 20, though he had been pretending to have a leg injury and not sparring with Hannah, he had tested himself privately. His weight had quickly increased to 85 kilograms, and his nerve reactions and motor coordination had greatly improved. Previously, the martial arts routines Jack learned at the dojo had been forcibly turned into muscle memory by the system. Although they looked good, their practicality was low since real fights weren't turn-based. The Krav Maga he practiced with Hannah emphasized quick, precise, and ruthless moves, requiring a deep understanding of human pain points and weaknesses. It wasn't about looking good but about incapacitating the opponent, very practical for subduing criminals. Although it also required repetitive practice to form muscle memory, the moves were flexible and adaptable. When a high-ping player became a low-ping player, the routines and techniques began to integrate smoothly, enhanced by the system's skill levels. Chapter 35, Listening to Hannah's Past. Sure enough, after less than an hour of sparring with Hannah, Jack received a system notification in his mind. Opening the system, he found that his combat skills had upgraded from proficient to advanced. He earned another 5 gold coins, feeling delighted. This way of improving system skills through his own efforts gave him a greater sense of accomplishment than spending hard-earned gold coins. Seeing him suddenly zoning out, Hannah was secretly pleased. She feinted with her arm and silently swung a kick, hitting the outer side of Jack's thigh. This was one of the body's pain points, causing intense pain without permanent damage, capable of bringing a grown man to his knees instantly. By the time Jack reacted, it was too late. Fortunately, he was no longer the same. Enduring the sidekick with gritted teeth, he managed to suppress the sudden pain thanks to his 20-point physique. He quickly grabbed Hannah's ankle. Hannah wasn't flustered. She had a counter for this move. As her back hit the ground, she pulled herself closer to Jack using the leg he held, shortening the distance between them. Simultaneously, she pushed her left foot towards his abdomen. Usually, even if Jack reacted in time, his body couldn't keep up, leading to them grappling on the ground, continuing their practice of ground techniques similar to Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, which was also part of Krav Maga. While wrestling with Hannah might seem enticing, it was actually quite dangerous. Jack, as a training partner and from a male perspective, could only lock a joint or twist a wrist, while Hannah had no such reservations. Due to her past psychological issues, she could only train with female coaches and couldn't accept male opponents. This created a bottleneck in her skills. When Jack became her training partner, she didn't mind giving him a hard time during ground fights, using moves like groin grabs, throat locks, and scissor holds without considering future consequences. However, today was different. Jack swiftly grabbed her other ankle with his right hand, kicked her legs, and rolled her into a ball. "Do you surrender?" Jack held Hannah's slender ankles with one hand, suppressing her while grinning mischievously. After being tormented for 3 months, he finally turned the tables. Never. Hannah struggled, still trying to counterattack. Seeing her peach-shaped buttocks swaying in front of him, outlined clearly by her tight yoga pants, Jack reluctantly let go. While he had taken liberties during training, doing so intentionally was inappropriate. Hannah lay on the ground panting, and Jack lay beside her to rest. The room fell silent. After a while, Hannah suddenly flipped over, pressing down on Jack, startling him as he thought she wanted to continue training. Instead, she kissed him, leaving Jack wide-eyed. It was her first time initiating a kiss. She had always been adamant about adhering to the rule against workplace romances. "I've submitted my resignation to Zoe. I'll be reporting to Quantico next month." Feeling the warmth of her body and her breath on his face, Jack was momentarily speechless. "So soon? Don't you need to go through interviews and a series of physical tests first?" For a moment, Jack felt reluctant. If his relationship with Zoe and Maureen was tinged with adult attraction, his feelings for Hannah were much purer. "Zoe has some friends at the FBI. They saw my LAPD file and approved a special admission. After 5 months of training, I'll be assigned to the LA office." Jack breathed a sigh of relief. "So, I'll see you again in 5 months." Hannah nodded. "I need you to help me with something then, something related to my childhood. It's the reason I decided to join the FBI." Jack's heart tightened. Was she finally willing to reveal her past wounds to him? "You probably know by now that I'm not always a by-the-book person, right?" Unexpectedly, the vigilante justice he and Tim carried out on that serial killer had inadvertently cemented Hannah's decision. "You know I'm a Texas girl, right? My father was Brant Stevens, and my mother was Jennifer Carlisle. We lived on a small farm in West Texas, near New Mexico, until I was 15. Her voice began to choke up, tears falling onto Jack's face like broken pearls. "I had a happy family until one day, someone set fire to our stable. Inside were several pregnant mares and a purebred pony my dad had given me. Dad rushed in to save the horses, and Mom followed him. I'll never forget that night. When the police and fire trucks arrived, they only found 2 tightly embraced bodies." Seeing the vacant look in Hannah's eyes, Jack remained silent, wiping her tears away. "Later, my father's evil brother came with his family from Georgia, claiming to be my guardian." Jack's heart tightened, recalling Hannah's unusual hatred for Angus Lucius. "I naively thought they were my family until one day, I discovered them." Them. Jack could hardly believe his ears. Yes, him and his son. Jack felt his blood boiling with rage. When these despicable acts happened to someone he cared about, he wanted to use the most brutal methods to punish the perpetrators. "So, that's the root of your psychological barrier with men." Jack's teeth ground together as he spoke. Hannah was momentarily stunned by his expression, then burst into laughter, confusing Jack. "Yes, but not quite what you think. I mean, my aversion to men, except for you, is indeed because of this, but they never touched me." Hannah brushed a strand of hair from her face and kissed Jack to comfort him. "Under my pillow was a gift from my father for my 10th birthday, a Smith & Wesson M36 revolver designed for women." Chapter 36, Grateful for the Redneck's Robust Morals. Grateful for the redneck's robust morals, Jack breathed a sigh of relief. What happened next? "I shot and killed both the father and son. The woman I called Aunt went mad. When the police arrived, she ranted and revealed everything. It was my devilish uncle who started the fire. He was hired by a company called Clarion Chemical to intimidate my parents." "Why?" Jack asked, puzzled. He thought it was a simple case of greed for inheritance, but now a chemical company was involved. It was because of river pollution nearby. My father contacted an EPA investigator to look into it, which alarmed the chemical company, leading to such dirty tactics. Afterwards, Zoe's parents came to Texas and became my guardians since our mothers were sisters. Jack realized that this explained the relationship between Zoe and Hannah. Zoe's father used his connections to sue the chemical company, but it ended in a settlement. He said the parent company of Clarion Chemical was very powerful, with congressmen involved. I knew he did his best. Dragging it out further could have even endangered Zoe's family. Not long after, the EPA investigator died in an accident, so I asked Uncle Anderson to sell my parents' farm and move to LA with them. From that day, I set my sights on joining the FBI, vowing to uncover the mastermind and hold them accountable for my parents' deaths. Jack blinked, feeling a sense of déjà vu. Wasn't this plot similar to a TV series where a chemical company was the villain? In that series, although it had a detective veneer, it was action-packed, a style he had always loved. The heroine's sacrificial scenes were also a big draw, though they paled in comparison to the current Hannah, who was pressing him down and taking his breath away. So, I guess you don't just want to find the culprit but also want to avenge your parents personally. Does Zoe know your plan? That would be the true redneck style, wouldn't it? She wanted me to tell you everything and hear your thoughts. She thinks in some matters, your perspective is more mature than hers. How did he end up being relied upon by these sisters? No one should dictate your thoughts on this matter. If avenging your parents will make you feel better, then go for it. I'll be with you. Anyway, he now had the system skills to rely on. With Jack Reacher to lead the charge, even if he did nothing, the real culprit would eventually be taken down. He could let Hannah deliver the final blow if necessary. With a happy mwah, Hannah kissed Jack again, then straightened up, playfully pressing down, almost causing him to lose control. Stop, no, don't move, Hannah, if you keep doing this, you'll regret it. Hannah's small, round face showed a defiant look. Am I not as pretty as Zoe? Or is my figure not as good as hers? Why can you accept her but always reject me? What the heck? When did I ever reject you? Isn't respecting you the right thing to do? Of course, Jack knew this wasn't the time for reasoning. He needed to soothe her now, or things might really get out of hand. You already know about my relationship with Zoe, so you should, ow. Hannah leaned down again, her expression a mix of amusement and seriousness. I know you go to Zoe after every shooting session and that you've been with Maureen too. But we are the ones living together. What kind of weird love triangle is this? Even soap operas wouldn't dare write such a plot. Since you know, why? Daddy had many lovers too, like Aunt Daisy and Aunt Chris. Mommy said as long as Daddy's favorite was her and me, it was fine. What kind of twisted upbringing is this? Are you Mormon? Jack had a lot of thoughts but couldn't voice them. Zoe is about to marry Maureen. I know their plans, but no matter how many lovers you have, I want to be your only wife. Isn't it a bit early to talk about this? Jack forced a dry smile. But I can't live without you anymore. In this country, I won't find another man who treats me better than you. I want you to cook for me for life, to care for me. I want to be like Lois Lane, and you're my Superman. That day in the Bronson building, I thought I was really going to die, but you appeared like Superman and saved me. From that moment, Hannah didn't continue but pressed her cheek against his. Jack's restless heart inexplicably calmed down. Without speaking, he gently hugged Hannah, patting her back like comforting a frightened child. After a long while, he flipped her over, gently whispering, I promise, I'll always be by your side until you're tired of me, my girl. Hannah finally smiled satisfactorily, whispering back, me too. Back in his attic bed, Jack chuckled wryly. Now he was juggling 3 relationships without sinking. He had to curb his tendency to be overly accommodating. Meeting wonderful girls like Zoe and Hannah was pure luck. If he ever encountered a Yandere, he'd be in real trouble. He vaguely remembered that John, also a kind-hearted guy, seemed to encounter a Yandere, highly intelligent and emotional, almost driving him crazy. Flipping open The Friend of Military and Civilian Talents, at his bedside, Jack soon immersed himself in the sea of knowledge. This divine book was indeed divine, covering everything from military knowledge to agriculture, civil engineering, home appliances, and even engraving and photography basics. The saying, one should have many skills, proved true. Gaining these skills would be beneficial when he became a detective or even an FBI agent. In this TV show-like world, he wouldn't lack complex cases, making skill growth and system gold coin income mutually reinforcing. Chapter 37, Unexpected Gain. Early the next morning, Jack received a text message from the bank notifying him that the $5,000 bail he had paid was returned. Only then did he remember the unfortunate father and son. It seemed that after paying the bail, he had forgotten all about the matter. Apparently, that guy named Daniel Lawson had behaved himself. Jack also remembered that his son's name was Jacob. At the time, because of the gunfight with the drug dealer in the parking lot and saving Chief Gray, he had been so worried about the aftermath of the shooting that he never thought to contact the other party. He hadn't expected the case to be resolved so quickly. So, Jack called Lawson and found out that due to his good record, a sympathetic judge, and Angela's favorable testimony, Lawson was only sentenced to 1 month of community service and had now put the case behind him. Thinking it over, Jack decided to drive over to check on the father and son. After all, since he had already helped, he might as well follow through and make sure Lawson didn't get into trouble again. On the way, he bought a bunch of food like milk and cereal. Remembering the worn-out stroller he had seen at their door, Jack spent another $100 to buy a brand-new children's bicycle. He then drove to the white 2-story house. Located in a middle-class neighborhood on Genesee Street, Jack noticed that although the residents were mostly blue-collar workers, there weren't many African Americans loitering around. The streets were old but very clean. Seeing Jack in plain clothes, Daniel Lawson still looked a bit nervous, and his son Jacob clung timidly to his father's pants, apparently recalling that nightmare morning. Jack smiled and put down the large bag in his hand. "It's okay. I'm just glad you didn't go to jail. I also brought a gift for little Jacob. It's in the trunk." Lawson expressed his gratitude profusely. Seeing this man, crushed early by life, Jack felt a pang of sadness, remembering how similar he was to his own late father. Jack took a blue child's bicycle from the trunk, unwrapped it, and pushed it in front of Jacob. Seeing the boy happily riding around the yard, both men shared a satisfied smile. "So, what are your plans now?" Jack asked. Lawson, looking a bit more hopeful, replied, "I plan to sell this house and move to Salt Lake City. My father runs an auto repair shop there and is willing to take us in." "Have you found a buyer yet?" Jack inquired. Lawson shook his head. "The economy is bad, and this isn't a particularly desirable neighborhood. The bank has given me 3 months to pay back the loan, or they'll repossess the house." Jack hesitated. Regardless of his future with Hannah, living at her place indefinitely wasn't ideal. Especially if they became a couple, he didn't want to seem like he was freeloading. Although he didn't have much money at the moment and was resistant to loans, his inherent stubbornness made him consider investing in real estate. Moreover, now that he was officially an LAPD officer, banks tended to offer favorable loan conditions to police officers. He had been looking for rental properties for some time, but none had caught his eye. Now, this house intrigued him. He politely asked Lawson if he could tour the house. Surprised and skeptical, Lawson quickly led Jack through it. The house wasn't large, just 2 stories with 4 rooms, a living room, 2 bathrooms, and about 200 square meters in total. There was a small basement for storage or converting into a gun vault. If the room next to the living room was converted into an enclosed kitchen, it would meet Jack's needs. The key feature was the large backyard, about 70 to 80 square meters, where Jacob was now riding his bike. It sparked many ideas in Jack's mind. "Would you consider selling this house to me?" Jack asked. Once interested, he didn't hesitate. As a traveler from another world with a system, he had some confidence. "Are you serious?" Lawson looked ecstatic. He couldn't possibly repay the loan and would face severe financial hardship if the bank repossessed and auctioned the house. Jack shook his head with a smile. "Don't get too excited yet. You need to get a real estate agent to appraise it. I'll see if the price is right and get a friend to help evaluate it. I'm not very knowledgeable in this area." Overjoyed, Lawson immediately began contacting a real estate agent. Jack also called John, who was well-versed in this field, to help him out. After arranging for John to come by after work to inspect the house, Jack spent the afternoon at the bank, applying for pre-approval for a formal loan. He had researched the process online, which was quite complex. Fortunately, escrow companies could handle everything for a fee. "I've checked the structure and utilities, everything's fine. The house is less than 10 years old and needs minimal repairs. A price of $450,000 is reasonable given the area." "You've got a good deal," John said, smiling after his inspection. Jack felt relieved but also more sympathetic toward Lawson. In this cursed country, a middle-class family could lose everything due to a few setbacks, without a chance to recover. All Jack could do was hope his small help allowed the father and son to start anew in Salt Lake City. "So, you're moving out soon?" Hannah asked when Jack came home, sweat still on her face from her workout, looking a bit miffed. Jack smiled and ruffled her hair, deliberately messing up her golden locks. That expression didn't suit her sweet nature. "I need a place of my own." Seeing her still upset, he teased her, "I'll need a lady of the house. I wonder if someone is interested." Hannah's face turned bright red, and she hugged his arm tightly. Smelling the floral scent mixed with sweat on her, Jack thought of something. It wasn't that he disliked her scent, having trained together often, he was used to it. In fact, at times, that scent of female hormones was quite enticing. Chapter 38, Learning Makes Me Happy. Hannah always paid attention to her grooming, with deodorant and wax being the most consumed items among her daily cosmetics. Of course, now she might have to add floral water to the list. Now that their relationship was clarified, Jack couldn't favor one over the other. Since Zoe and Maureen had both enjoyed the healing technique, it was now Hannah's turn. He had her take a shower first while he went upstairs to get a few bottles of floral essential oils. These were a specialty from the southwestern province of Ceres, costing $60 a bottle on Amazon. Jack had bought 3 bottles, rose for the mature and beautiful Zoe, jasmine for the intellectual glasses-wearing Maureen, and wild orange with mint for the sunny and sweet Hannah. Whether it was Jack's increasingly proficient massage skills or the overly ambiguous atmosphere, when he finished the healing technique, Hannah's face was red enough to drip blood, and her resentful gaze was hard to look at directly, forcing Jack to retreat hastily. After a quick cold shower, Jack lay on the bed, silently repeating to himself that learning makes him happy. He calmed down and began to read, Friend of Military and Civilian Talents, to quickly acquire skills related to home renovation. Real estate transactions in the USA, though cumbersome, were efficient. The entire process was expected to be completed within 2 weeks. With limited cash on hand and a large loan to repay, hiring a renovation company was out of the question. Jack planned to move in and gradually fix the place himself, which was a common practice in the USA. Thinking about the funding problem, Jack picked up an old laptop from the table and logged into a cryptocurrency website. 3 years ago, when he first crossed over, he made his biggest investment by buying 30 bitcoins at $200 each. Since last year, 2017, the price of Bitcoin had been rising steadily. Jack planned to sell them all before 2021, before the USA imposed taxes on Bitcoin. Given the similarity of this world to his previous one, he expected the price of Bitcoin to reach around $60,000 each by then, potentially earning him up to $1.8 million. Before the system was activated, Jack used his foresight as a traveler to set this backup plan. He didn't aim to make more, fearing that too much wealth could make him a target. Having lived over 40 years in his previous life, Jack knew that some dreams were just dreams. In any country, wealth that didn't match one's abilities and status would only invite disaster. Closing the laptop, Jack immersed himself in the joy of learning. Though mental strength couldn't directly enhance intelligence, it allowed him to focus intensely, a dream come true for many students. Thanks to the system's attribute boost, Jack only needed to spend an hour a day on community college courses. Plus, with less sleep needed, he had 5 more hours each day than the average person. On the 3rd and final day of his vacation, Jack took the rose essential oil and drove to Zoe's house. After some intimacy, Zoe, looking radiant again, nestled in Jack's arms, her mind still lingering in bliss. "When are you and Maureen going to announce your relationship? Should I prepare a wedding gift in advance?" Jack asked with a peculiar smile. Ever since learning about their plan from Maureen, he felt like a supporting character in a Japanese manga. Snapping back to reality, Zoe playfully bit Jack, who had the nerve to tease her after benefiting from the situation, causing him to grimace in pain. "Did Hannah tell you everything about her case? What do you think?" Zoe asked. Jack recounted his conversation with Hannah, adding, "We'll discuss everything after she returns from Quantico. Also, I don't recommend her using the FBI's internal system to investigate the case." He remembered a corrupt FBI agent being involved in the plot of Jack Reacher. If Hannah's private investigation were discovered, it would not only alert the criminals but also endanger her. He knew from some graphic scenes in the show just how ruthless that counterfeit gang was. Of course, he needed a plausible reason. Since the crime syndicate has a congressman behind it, their reach might extend into the FBI. Otherwise, the FBI wouldn't have ignored the murders of Hannah's parents and that EPA investigator. Zoe seemed to find Jack's reasoning plausible and frowned, troubled. My dad tried to investigate through his connections, but was stonewalled. Over the years, I've used my resources in the police department to look into it, but without any progress. Jack gently smoothed her frown with a finger, comforting her. I just got rid of your forehead wrinkles, so don't furrow it again. Leave this to me. Zoe looked at her little man with some doubt. It wasn't that she underestimated Jack, but if her family and she, as a mid-level police officer, couldn't achieve it, where did this newly minted patrol officer get his confidence? Hire a hacker. Have you never thought of that? Jack's answer was so natural it left Zoe speechless. You all think about fighting fire with fire, but why limit yourselves to legal methods? Just pay a hacker to uncover the real owner of the Kleiner Industries, and the rest will be easier. Jack wasn't just making things up. Hackers in TV shows were practically omnipotent. In series like CSI, NCIS, and Bones, genius computer experts often supported the protagonists. Given the mishmash of timelines in this world, except for older shows with specific settings like Hunter, most others either hadn't started or were just beginning. For example, NCIS was formed only 5 years ago, with a middle-aged woman currently in charge. The Jeffersonian Institute from Bones existed, but its forensic lab was still just a rumor. Jack even Googled a certain genius software engineer, Harold Finch. His partner, Nathan, was a well-known billionaire, with many related online articles. It was rumored that their company was collaborating with the FBI on a project to counter terrorist attacks. From this, Jack inferred that the deadpan, cool Uncle Reese might still be working for the CIA. Chapter 39, Prison Transport Accident. Jack did have a hacker friend, future NCIS chief forensic scientist and computer genius, Abby Ciuto, who happened to be his high school classmate. This goth girl was a big fan of Jack back in high school, persistently trying to win his first night, which made Jack's predecessor both troubled and good friends with her. After high school, Abby attended Louisiana State University, where she was currently triple majoring in sociology, criminology, and psychology. Even after Jack crossed over, they kept in touch through social media. When Jack was troubled by the aftermath of the shooting, it was Abby who suggested he buy some psychology-related books, leading him to unlock the psychology skill in his system. Zoe, having experienced many difficulties and working in law enforcement, had fallen into a habitual way of thinking and never considered this approach. After pondering for a moment, Zoe nodded, thinking it might be worth a try. She couldn't help but feel a bit differently, realizing for the first time that this once overly mature young man had grown into a real man, someone who could offer her help and advice, and whom she could rely on. Don't worry, I'll be there with Hannah. You don't need to worry about her safety. I think my recent performance proves I'm not just talking big, Jack assured, noticing the strange look in Zoe's eyes, mistakenly thinking she was worried about Hannah. Humph. Zoe felt a sudden surge of jealousy. Although she had made this choice out of necessity, it still bothered her that the boy she had nurtured would end up with her cousin. Jack didn't need to guess, he could smell the jealousy in the air. At times like this, words were unnecessary, actions spoke louder. They toured the bedroom, then the bathroom, then the living room. Jack worried that when he renovated his own house, he might subconsciously replicate Zoe's layout simply because he was so familiar with it. Thanks to the healing technique, Jack wondered if he'd be able to press the gas pedal of the police car the next day. After returning home, he contacted Abby late into the night. Of course, he didn't really ask her to investigate Kleiner Industries. Instead, he asked her to hack into a rural police station in Georgia. If she found a detainee named Jack Reacher, she was to notify him immediately. Jack didn't remember the town's name from the show, but he knew it was repeatedly mentioned as the hometown of a blind blues singer. A quick Google search revealed it to be Margrave, Georgia. Investigating the counterfeit gang directly was too dangerous. Abby was just a regular college student, albeit a genius. A mistake could attract danger or cause unnecessary repercussions, disrupting the plot. With Jack's current skill levels and status as an ordinary police officer, he didn't have the protagonist's plot armor from the original series. Facing such a criminal organization might mean he and Hannah could escape unharmed, but he could lose his police job and his system might shut down. Leveraging the abilities and identities of the main characters at crucial plot points to push events toward a perfect ending was the best strategy. On the first day back at work, Jack and Tim received a round of applause. Although the serial killer case was ordered sealed from the top, it wasn't a secret within the Wilshire Police Department. Everyone knew about their heroic actions that day. Jack was amused to see Hannah pulling Lucy to reenact the wall slam scene. He realized American culture also had its share of fujoshi, boys love, fans, regretting his promise not to spank her. With Bishop transferred to ATF, the station welcomed a new black female officer, Nyla Harper, who left a deeper impression on Jack than Bishop did. Despite her petite and delicate appearance, Harper was a formidable woman. She had spent several years as an undercover agent and had a golden ticket to join any department. However, she chose the relatively stable patrol division to fight for her daughter's custody. It seemed she and Tim were old friends. Now out of the rookie phase, Jack no longer had to sit in the front row during briefings. Instead, he sat in the middle, flanked by Hannah and the bickering pair. Today's briefing was short. Jack and Hannah went to the armory to get their equipment. Hannah had a month before reporting to Quantico and would officially leave in 3 weeks. Meanwhile, Angela was preparing for a promotion to detective, meaning Jack's familiar partners would soon be gone. Jack wished John and Lucy could be his partners, but they wouldn't be eligible for 6 more months. He wanted to team up with John not only because of their close relationship but also because John, as the protagonist, would encounter interesting cases more frequently. More cases meant more opportunities for merit. Jack didn't want to waste time in the patrol division. He planned to take the detective exam or try to enter the FBI within a year and a half after earning his bachelor's degree from community college. With Zoe entering politics and Hannah going to Quantico, Jack felt pressured. Although the girls had expectations of him, shortening the social gap would be beneficial for their long-term relationship. He didn't want to end up with nothing to talk about when meeting with a city councilor or future state legislator, resorting only to touring the bedroom. After getting their equipment from the armory, Jack and Hannah were chatting and laughing when they saw the entire precinct mobilizing. Angela and Tim hurried past them. "What's going on?" Hannah called out to Angela. A prison transport vehicle had an accident. It was carrying court prisoners. Jack and Hannah exchanged a glance and quickly grabbed their gear to follow. This was the second full deployment of the Wilshire Police Department since the shootout at Bronson Tower. Last time, Jack was the one being rescued, and this was his first time experiencing a major operation firsthand. Dozens of police cars, sirens blaring, sped down the road, while 3 police helicopters roared overhead, arriving at the scene first. The accident happened on a winding mountain road. When Jack stopped the car, a county sheriff in a tan uniform, head bleeding, was standing by the roadside. Chapter 40, Emergency Rescue. Inspector Gray was the first to get out of the car and was inquiring about the situation. How did the accident happen? The slightly overweight county police officer, although injured on the head, seemed to be conscious but was still in shock, stammering as he spoke. A coyote suddenly jumped in front of the car. Graham swerved hard, and we went off the road. Inspector Gray glanced down the slope and continued to ask. How many people are still on the bus? Seeing LAPD officers surrounding them, the county police officer calmed down a bit. 20 prisoners and 2 guards. Noticing that he was unsteady on his feet, Inspector Gray quickly stepped forward to support him. Did any prisoners escape? Some might have. As the county police officer lost consciousness, Inspector Gray loudly gave orders. Go down and count the number of people. Zoe, standing nearby, picked up the radio and called the command center. Command center, this is 7L10. We are at the scene of a traffic accident. I declare the city in tactical alert. We need a lot of ambulances and additional helicopters for search operations. Dispatch all available units from Rampart to North Hollywood to conduct a search mission centered around the accident site, with an estimated range of a 10-minute walk. Jack drew his gun and slid down the steep slope with the others to the smoking bus. This specially modified bus for transporting prisoners had reinforced windows, so even rolling down a steep hill wouldn't throw people out. But when they reached the front of the bus, they saw a prisoner in an orange jumpsuit lying outside. Tim checked the prisoner's carotid artery, shook his head, and indicated that it was a corpse. Jack and John guarded the overturned bus while the relatively petite Angela and Hannah crawled inside through the shattered windshield. Inside the bus, about a dozen injured people were lying scattered. Some were still groaning, while others were silent. A wounded county police officer saw the two women and tried to get up, but Angela held him back, signaling him not to move. Ambulances are on their way. Can you give us a rough idea of the situation? 7 prisoners escaped. They took my keys and gun. Angela immediately reported this over the radio. All units be advised, 7 prisoners are on the run, at least one is armed. At this moment, John noticed some movement in the distant bushes and shouted. Something's happening at 10 o'clock. Tim signaled, go check it out, but be careful. Jack, realizing he couldn't do much here with so many seriously injured prisoners, signaled to Tim. I'll go too. It's too dangerous for John alone with armed fugitives. He then followed John into the bushes. Behind the bushes was a path leading into the forest, with a large trail of blood on the fallen leaves and branches. The two exchanged a glance and advanced cautiously. A few steps in, they heard a man groaning in pain. John was about to shout when Jack, already focused, motioned him to be quiet and quickly moved forward. They found the 3rd county officer, the deputy, who had lost his left foot and was desperately trying to crawl forward. Hey, relax, let us help you. Jack knelt on one knee, pressed a hand on the officer's shoulder, and used a healing spell. The officer was on the verge of hemorrhagic shock and barely conscious. John quickly called over the radio, 7A15, I need an ambulance immediately, 60 yards east of the accident site, approximately 50-year-old male, severe injuries. Jack pulled out his belt to make a tourniquet, holding down the struggling officer. I need to get help. Someone ran off. I need to get help. Hey, don't move. Support is here. We're right here. What's your name? Graham. I'm Jack, and this is John. Are you the driver? Your colleagues are safe. Stay still, the ambulance is almost here. Graham, pale and shivering, spoke haltingly. Will I die? Jack signaled John to lift Graham's leg and tie the belt around the stump, answering. Not with me here. Hang in there. Without waiting for a response, Jack tightened the belt around the bleeding stump. Graham convulsed, almost passing out. Hey, Graham, stay with me. You'll be fine. Jack kept slapping his cheeks to keep him conscious. Graham's injuries were severe, and he had lost a lot of blood. Even with Jack's healing spell, it was only barely keeping him alive, and Jack was starting to feel dizzy from the mental strain. John, distressed by the scene, looked like he was about to cry. You'll get better, you will. Just hold on. This is 7A15. Where the hell is that ambulance? Jack listened intently and heard the faint sound of sirens, patting the anxious John. John, the ambulance is here. Go guide the paramedics. I'll stay with him. John nodded and ran out, returning minutes later with paramedics. They put Graham on a stretcher and carried him to the ambulance. As he was being loaded, Graham grabbed John's arm. Tell her. I love her. John, about to relax, leaned in closer, asking, Who? Who should I tell? Graham, looking near death, muttered, Beth, tell Beth. Watching the ambulance drive away, John stared blankly, then turned to Jack, who was rubbing his temples. Do you think he'll make it? Maybe. We'll find out tonight after the mission when we visit the hospital. And maybe you can see your old flame too. Haven't asked her out yet. John, embarrassed, almost twisted his back. I apologized, but I've been too busy to ask her out. Jack patted his shoulder, don't miss the chance. Last time I saw her, her wedding ring was gone. John grunted and sighed, Gareth told me she's getting a divorce, which is why she came to LA. But do you really think this is a good time? We haven't been in touch for years. Chapter 41, Pursuit, Part 1. Jack waved a finger back and forth. No, don't ask me for advice on this. I'm a devil, I only corrupt hearts. You're better off keeping your distance. And while we were treating the wounded, there was a guy hiding behind that big tree over there. He thought he hid well, but the sound of handcuffs and leg irons didn't escape me. Don't you want to score some points and end your rookie phase early? At that moment, Hannah and Angela emerged from the bushes, dragging a large black man between them. He had been sprayed with pepper spray and was groaning in pain. Hey, boys, you should have been quicker. The credits ours. John shrugged and motioned for the ladies to go first. The ambulances had started arriving, and the injured county police and prisoners were being taken to the hospital. The prisoners who were unhurt and didn't try to escape were being taken back to prison. Inspector Gray was in front of a police car, assigning search tasks to the arriving officers from various districts. As far as we know, there are still 7 prisoners at large. 6. Tim and Lucy appeared, escorting a bald white man who had come out of nowhere. Inspector Gray's previously stern expression softened a bit as he nodded at them. Good job. So, 6 prisoners still at large. 5. Hannah and Angela struggled to pull the large black man up the slope, presenting him to everyone. Inspector Gray grinned, showing his neat, white teeth. Excellent. At this rate, we'll be home for dinner. But, fugitives without transportation move at 4 miles per hour, and they started 20 minutes ago. So we've set up a blockade a mile out and have helicopters patrolling continuously. If all goes well, the rest is house-to-house searches to root out these guys. But, Zoe stepped forward, if the fugitives escape the blockade, the search area will expand to the whole city, which will be a big problem for public safety. So, here are the assignments. Tim, Lucy, Angela, and other groups, along with K-9 units, would search house to house. New officer Neela Harper and John, along with reinforcement officers, would check vehicles at the blockade. Hannah, Jack, and 2 other groups would patrol the roads, ready to provide backup. Soon, good news came. Tim and Lucy captured a prisoner on a community street, and Angela and another officer caught another in a parking lot. This fool tried to steal a car from the parking lot, but he chose a high-end Mercedes with keyless entry. Then Jack and Hannah received a call for help from John. While John and Neela Harper were checking vehicles, they noticed a white driver looking overly nervous. He claimed he was just back from preschool, but although there was a child safety seat and half-eaten snacks in the back, there was no child. John stopped Officer Harper from opening the trunk, suspecting a prisoner had taken a child hostage and was hiding inside. What's your plan now? Hannah asked over the car radio. John sounded anxious. I handed my phone to the driver. He confirmed his 5-year-old daughter was kidnapped and hidden in the trunk. But the driver can't stop. The fugitive has a gun and demanded to be taken to a safe place before releasing the child. We're out of ideas. Jack chuckled and chimed in, a safe place. What's safer than the Wilshire Station garage? Jack had already spotted John's police car following a red Camry. John, I see you. We'll speed ahead. It's too easy to be exposed back here. Tell the driver to follow us. I'll notify the station to prepare. 15 minutes later, the red Camry drove into the garage. The door closed behind it, leaving the space dimly lit. The driver got out, nervously walked to the trunk, and tapped it lightly, trembling as he spoke. We're safe now. He opened the trunk, revealing a skinny Latino holding a handgun, huddled in the back with the gun pointed at a small girl of about 5 or 6. The prisoner glared at him. There's no one around. I did everything you said. Now give me back my daughter. You can take my car. The driver reached out with the keys. The skinny man waved his gun, signaling him to take the girl. The driver quickly grabbed his daughter and moved aside. Suddenly, the lights in the garage blazed, and a loud voice shouted, "Drop your gun." Officers Neela Harper and another black officer emerged from camouflaged positions, guns trained on the prisoner. Several more officers approached from the front of the car. Seeing no escape, the prisoner, still in his orange jumpsuit, dropped his gun and was handcuffed. The driver, clutching his daughter tightly, almost collapsed. John quickly supported him while Jack took the little girl. The girl, cute and not at all frightened, smiled sweetly at Jack and wrapped her arms around his neck. Jack almost kissed her chubby cheek but remembered he was in the USA and held back. Wow, what a cute sweetheart. Let me give you a kiss. Hannah, with no such restraint, leaned in and kissed the girl's cheek. The girl shyly ducked her head, looked at Jack, then hesitated before copying Hannah and giving Jack a big kiss. Seeing the father had recovered with John's help, Jack handed the girl back. "You're a very brave father, and your daughter is adorable." Thank you so much." The father sincerely thanked everyone present. Officer Neela Harper hurried back, calling out, "Inspector Anderson and Inspector Gray are summoning everyone. We need to return quickly." The group drove back to the accident scene, where only firefighters and some workers were still busy around the overturned bus. A modified command bus was parked nearby, and everyone boarded. Inspector Gray, seeing everyone had arrived, began speaking. 3 more fugitives have been arrested. That leaves 2. It's been 6 hours. We must assume they've escaped the blockade. Chapter 42, Capture, Part 2. Zoe turned the laptop in front of her so the screen faced everyone. Max Gibson, only 24, but he's been with the 54th Street Gang for over 10 years. He was recently charged with aggravated assault and attempted murder in Victorville, and sentenced to 12 years in prison. The 54th Street Gang will stop at nothing to help him escape, including assisting him in fleeing to another state. Tim, the local insider, nodded. "I have a contact in the 54th Street Gang who might give us some inside information." Inspector Gray instructed, "Go talk to your contact." Tim acknowledged and left with Lucy. Zoe continued, "Next, we have Caleb Yost. In my opinion, he's the most dangerous. This man is 44, a former bank investor, sentenced to 5 years for securities fraud, and an additional 8 years for resisting arrest and biting off a deputy's nose." Everyone exchanged shocked glances. Inspector Gray added, "The FBI believes Caleb hid a large sum of money before he was arrested. He will likely try to retrieve this money and flee to another state. So we need to use the FBI's clues to find where he hid the money, then wait for him." John pondered. "Exactly. Until Tim gets enough information from his contact, you all should visit Caleb's relatives and look for the cash stash." Zoe waved her hand to dismiss everyone to their tasks. Jack and Hannah visited Caleb Yost's first wife, a former model in her 30s who had remarried and seemed happy with her wealthy new husband. After a brief conversation, they left and returned to the patrol car. Hannah used the radio to check the latest updates. The 2 fugitives were still at large. However, Tim had bad news. His contact said Max Gibson likely wouldn't seek help from the 54th Street Gang because he had an affair with the gang leader Cohen's woman. Jack nearly laughed out loud. Why would he run? Doesn't he know he's safer in prison? Hannah shook her head. Not necessarily. Victorville prison isn't high security. There could be gang members there trying to kill him. It'd be worse if he gets killed outside and they dispose of the body. Our task would get harder. Jack shook his head and contacted John's team via radio. "Hey, John, any findings on your end?" John replied, "We just arrived at Caleb Yost's second wife's aunt's house. The community volunteer said she goes to church every day but didn't show up today, so. Damn, I think we need backup. The door lock's been broken." Jack and Hannah exchanged glances, located John's reported position on the police laptop, and started the patrol car with sirens blaring. "John, stay safe. We're nearby and on our way." 5 minutes later, they arrived. During the drive, John had described the situation over the public channel. Caleb Yost had hidden money in his ex-wife's aunt's fireplace. When John and Neela Harper arrived, Caleb had taken the unfortunate old woman hostage and was now cornered in the living room by the fireplace. Jack and Hannah exited the car and prepared to enter the house to assist John. Zoe's call came through the radio. Tim's contact, a retired gang lieutenant, had tricked the gang kid into his house and notified Tim to capture him. But 54th Street Gang members found out, and now the whole gang had surrounded the contact's neighborhood. Tim and Lucy were already there, but most of the police resources were now tied up at John and Jack's location, unable to provide timely backup. According to Tim, about 30 to 40 gang members were there, determined to reclaim their boss's honor. This was Jack's own interpretation. Americans don't use the term wearing a green hat. In any case, Tim's situation was more dangerous. A gang war would endanger the entire neighborhood. Zoe ordered them to quickly resolve the hostage situation, while Tim would try to hold out until Jack and additional officers could arrive. "Damn, everything's happening at once," Jack grumbled as he and Hannah rushed into the house. Inside, the scene was more complicated than expected. It wasn't a typical hostage situation with a gun to the hostage's head, demanding to be let go. John and Neela Harper were covering both the front and back entrances of the living room. Former banker Caleb Yost was huddled by the fireplace, covered in soot, with piles of cash he'd pulled out. His right hand held a string attached to a shotgun's trigger, which was taped to the old woman's shoulder across the room, the barrel pointed at her head. Well, technically, it was a gun to the hostage's head, just with extra steps. John was negotiating with Caleb. "Caleb, it's over. You can't escape." Caleb, looking desperate, raised his right hand with the string attached to the trigger, shouting madly. "Get out, you cops, or I'll paint these walls with blood." John kept using his negotiation skills. "Right now, you're only facing aggravated assault charges. You might get a few more years in prison. But if you kill her..." "Shut up." Caleb Yost pulled the string taut and screamed, "Stop talking. I hate prison. If I have a chance to escape, I'll take it. Back off, and get someone who can make decisions, or I'll pull the trigger." "Heh, I thought tying Aunt Sally up with duct tape was silly, but now I'm glad I did." Seeing the situation, Jack relaxed, quickly running through Caleb's profile in his mind, coming up with a plan. He patted John and whispered, "Don't you think this guy talks too much? Let me handle it." Chapter 43, Capture, Part 3. In the astonished gaze of everyone present, Jack took 2 steps forward and holstered his Glock 22. "Hey, rookie, what do you think you're doing? One more step and I'll take action." The former banker's expression was somewhat panicked, his eyes darting left and right, seemingly unsure of what these cops were planning. Jack ignored him, pulling out a big gun from his underarm holster. The 6-inch barrel of the Colt Python was quite intimidating, and the former banker's face paled a few shades at the sight of the thick black barrel aimed at his head. Jack cocked the hammer of the revolver, then, looking very impatient, said, "I'll tell you 2 things. First, in order to catch you bastards, no one here had lunch, and now we've missed dinner, so we're all very unhappy. Second, this country has never compromised in a hostage situation. If you kill your Aunt Sally, you'll be riddled with bullets instantly. Lastly, except for that old rookie, this young police officer," he gestured toward Hannah, "is the shooting champion of the LAPD for 2 consecutive years. And she," he pointed to Neela Harper on the other side of the room, "was an outstanding undercover officer who single-handedly took down an entire Mexican drug cartel. As for me," Jack paused, a cruel smile appearing on his face, "I've only been a cop for 4 months, haven't had many chances to shoot yet, so I've only taken down 4 or 5 bad guys. I plan to try out this .357 caliber big gun. This way, I can guarantee that before you pull that string, in just 0.1 seconds, I'll blow your face off, sending a 9mm bullet through your skull, shattering your brainstem, and maybe even saving your Aunt Sally." The former banker, Caleb Yost, began to tremble, sweat breaking through the soot on his face, making him look a bit comical. You're bluffing. You wouldn't dare shoot. If Aunt Sally dies, you'll be in big trouble. And you mentioned 3 points. Jack waved the Colt Python and rolled his eyes, "Seems like you're not too stupid." "Yes, it was 3 points." Then he looked at John, "Tell him if I dare to shoot and what trouble I'd be in if the hostage dies." As a master of banter, John's ability to follow up was obviously top-notch. He tilted his head, frowned thoughtfully, and asked Neela Harper on the other side, seemingly uncertain. "Writing 2 more reports. Am I right, Coach?" "Yes, that's correct," Neela Harper replied, not very pleased. Hannah couldn't resist chiming in, "Leave it to me. I've been writing Jack's reports anyway." Seeing all the officers present looking unconcerned, the elderly woman, serving as the hostage, let out a terrified whimper. Jack glanced at her without a flicker of emotion, positioned himself for a shot, and said, "I'll count to 3. Surrender or die." The others also stepped forward, aiming their guns at Caleb Yost. 1. "Don't shoot. I surrender." The former banker quickly untied the rope and raised his hands. John hurried forward to restrain the men, while Neela Harper swiftly approached the hostage, cutting the tape off her shoulders and removing the shotgun. Jack exhaled deeply and holstered the Colt Python. "John, take care of this. Tim is still waiting for us. John was handcuffing Caleb Yost and turned back to say it was fine, then suddenly asked, "Were you serious just now? Would you really have shot if he hadn't surrendered?" Jack pointed to the stack of cash on the floor and asked, "How much do you think that is?" John looked puzzled. 50 grand. No more than 80. The FBI said he hid at least $1 million. Do you think he'd risk everything for that small amount? I've only seen bankers jump off buildings when they're bankrupt. He's clearly not that type. Jack shrugged and left the room with Hannah. Hannah still seemed doubtful. "Weren't you afraid he wouldn't buy your bluff?" Jack started the car, giving her a look that said she didn't know him at all. "I was less than 5 meters away. Do you know the power of a .357 Magnum at that distance? I could have shot through the rope and a few of his fingers without harming the hostage." Just then, Zoe's call came through on the radio. Tim and Lucy were blocked at the informant's house, surrounded by armed gang members, and the situation could escalate at any moment. Jack gestured for Hannah to sit tight, turned on the siren, and floored the gas pedal, causing the tires to screech against the pavement. Because the hostage situation was resolved so quickly, several police cars that were originally on their way to provide backup joined the convoy, some with SWAT armored vehicles, quickly forming a long line of cars. Hannah's face was tense. The larger the formation, the more dangerous Tim and Lucy's situation was. Jack was silent too. The biggest problem with episodic shows was that he only remembered some overarching plot lines, like the Latin American drug lord they'd meet later, or which important characters would exit. But specific episode details were a blur. And now, because of his presence, the plot was already unrecognizable. Who knew what butterfly effects could lead to unexpected outcomes? Having spent so much time with these kind people, no matter how dissatisfied he was with the overall society of the USA, he couldn't help but develop feelings for some individuals. With this anxious mindset, Jack almost floored the gas pedal. "Are you serious? You almost killed me." Tim held his old back, glaring at Jack in the driver's seat. Just moments ago, Jack had sped over and almost knocked him over with a drift. "I saw you had drawn your gun, and there were so many armed thugs in front of you. I was worried something might happen." Jack, grinning, opened the car door. His driving skill had just upgraded to proficient, and he couldn't resist showing off, almost messing up. Very dissatisfied that Jack had ruined his highlight moment of facing down the thugs alone, Tim snorted and turned to announce loudly to the surrounded gang members, "You are all under arrest." With the situation now under control, Lucy came out of the house with the gang member Max Gibson. Jack took a special look at him. The guy didn't look all that great in person. He wondered how he had managed to hook up with the boss's wife. Was it all just skill? The number of new followers has dropped significantly in the past couple of days, and the novel's ranking has fallen a lot. If there are any shortcomings in the novel, please point them out in time. Although I may not necessarily listen, but more comments are always welcome. About those recommendation votes and reading stats, you know what to do. Help me get my ranking back up on the new books chart. If the number of followers keeps dropping, I might lose the next round of the new book PK. Chapter 44, Conveying Last Words. At 8 p.m., at the Wilshire station, Jack, eating a burger as he walked, found John, who was handing over the former banker Caleb Yost to the county police. "I let Hannah go home to rest first. I just got off the phone with the hospital, and Deputy Graham is out of danger now. Let's go visit him." John's expression was a bit strange. After hesitating for a moment, he said, "I just asked around. Graham doesn't have a wife, he's always been single. So, the message he asked me to pass on to Beth. American names are troublesome with all the nicknames and abbreviations, not to mention distinguishing whether to use the first or last name based on familiarity." Jack sighed and grabbed a county officer escorting a prisoner. "Excuse me, does Deputy Graham have any friends or colleagues named Elizabeth or Isabella?" "I'm Elizabeth. Is there something you need?" A white female officer in her 40s walked over. John looked delighted. "Do you know Graham?" The officer nodded. "Yes, we've worked together for the past 5 years." Jack finished his burger and stepped forward. "Has he ever called you Beth?" The officer's expression changed, not answering directly. "Why are you asking this?" John scratched his head and explained, "It's like this, we're the LAPD officers who found Graham at the accident scene. He grabbed my hand before getting into the ambulance and asked me to pass on a message. What did he say? Elizabeth glanced around, her eyes moistening, as if unsure what to do, wanting to explain something. I heard he might not make it, so. John quickly waved his hands. No, my colleague just spoke with the hospital. He's out of danger now. He hesitated, unsure how to proceed. Jack, feeling he had rolled his eyes too much today, straightforwardly took over. He said to tell Beth that he loves you. Elizabeth looked disbelieving, covering her mouth with her hands, her eyes showing joy, but her voice choked. You're lying. No. John quickly vouched for Jack. He thought he was going to die. Those were his last words. So, is it you? Are you two in a relationship? Jack, eager for gossip, pressed on. This was one of the few bright spots in an otherwise tough day, apart from the kiss from the little girl. He had to get to the bottom of it. Elizabeth burst into tears, nodding repeatedly. He's my friend, a really good one. There was a time I thought he'd ask me out, and I hoped he would, but he never did. Case closed. Jack and John high-fived in celebration. We're planning to visit him at the hospital. Would you like to join us? John invited. Elizabeth, wiping away her tears, nodded excitedly. I'll drive, Jack said, crumpling up his burger wrapper and tossing it into a trash can in the corner with a perfect throw. What a fairy tale ending, Hannah said, blushing, giving Jack a kiss after hearing about the eventful day. Oh, by the way, Jack added, as if suddenly remembering something, John, and that Dr. Clarice might also have something going on. They were gazing at each other in the hospital in a way that gave me goosebumps. What about us? Valentine's Day is in 2 months, but I'll be at Quantico then. Should we celebrate early? Hannah wrapped her arms around Jack's neck, her warm breath seemingly raising the temperature around them. Jack planted a kiss on her white, seductive collarbone and began to move downward, but she laughed and pushed him away. We agreed to wait until I get back from Quantico. Are you going to break that promise? Jack let out a frustrated growl, smacking her firm rear as punishment for teasing him. He hated promises, whether with Hannah or Zoe. They were too annoying. In the following days, good things kept happening. First, the 2 transmigration books added a series of beginner-level life skills to Jack, such as farming, carpentry, machining, photography, and more. Some skills even fused and branched into new ones. For example, farming combined with his existing gardening skills to form planting. New skills like bomb disposal fused with existing chemistry and handiwork skills to form demolition and disarmament skills. This sudden wealth of skills was dazzling, making Jack happy but also deeply aware of the scarcity of system coins. He had previously received 5 coins as a confirmation reward, plus the 3 he had recently saved, totaling only 8 coins, still not enough to upgrade a master-level skill. He was still debating whether to upgrade his rifle shooting to proficient first or wait until he had 10 coins to upgrade his handgun to master level, giving him the unbeatable skill within 10 steps. Each skill had its strengths. Considering he would be with the LAPD for a long time and that there would be many situations requiring a rifle, Jack decided that even when he had 10 coins, he would hold on to them and play it by ear. Additionally, in recent months, he had acquired some skills through other means, such as lockpicking from Angela and beginner-level Spanish and French through self-study and conversations with colleagues. However, due to limited time, these skills remained at the beginner level. Jack didn't plan to waste system coins on them, as beginner-level skills were usually sufficient for most situations. With continuous learning and exercise, his basic attributes were still improving. These skills would gradually upgrade with use. Another piece of good news was that Jack finally had his own house in this world. After a series of complicated procedures, the white 2-story house at 7765 Genesee Street was finally transferred to his name. For this, he paid nearly $3,000 a month on a loan that would last 20 years. Despite not wanting to end up like Americans who receive a stack of bills at the end of each month, Jack had unconsciously begun to resemble this world's inhabitants. Just like people in his previous life who, after entering the 21st century, took out loans that required a lifetime of hard work to repay, to buy a house of their own. After sending Daniel Lawson and his son on a plane to Salt Lake City, Jack used 3 days of his spare time to clean up the house inside and out, moving his things in over a weekend. Chapter 45, Angela's Heartbreak. Uncertain if Americans have a concept similar to a housewarming party, Jack was nonetheless excited. He prepared a lavish meal and invited colleagues from the Wilshire station and some new friends for a small party. Among the guests were Dr. Scarlett from Central Hospital and the cheerful young girl, Carla, who had recovered and now frequently visited the Wilshire station. She idolized Hannah and vowed that her future goal was to become an LAPD officer. Detective Hunter and his wife also attended, making the stern-faced Inspector Gray a bit nervous. Clearly, it wasn't just Hannah, Tim, and Angela who idolized the Hunters. Midway through the party, Zoe and Maureen, dressed in evening gowns, made a stunning entrance, dazzling everyone present. Luckily, at least at the Wilshire station, there seemed to be no strict hierarchy in daily life, and everyone enjoyed themselves. Finally, the day came when Hannah would leave the LAPD. It was her last day at the Wilshire station. Although she was headed to Quantico, so the sadness was mixed with well wishes for the Texan girl. As one of the station's beloved figures, Superintendent Anderson might not have been very approachable, but Hannah was everyone's darling. Despite her slight androphobia, her cheerful personality and sweet looks won her many male friends as long as physical contact wasn't involved. Hannah, having received a pile of gifts, glanced at Jack, who obediently handed over the gift he had prepared, a sandalwood-carved bobblehead figurine. Last night, Jack had painfully spent a system coin to upgrade his carpentry skill to proficient, partially because he realized his entry-level skill wasn't enough for the renovations he planned for his new home. After wasting quite a bit of material, and feeling the pinch financially, he had no choice but to level up the skill. Seeing the cartoon figurine that resembled her by about 60%, Hannah cherished it and carefully put it away before joining Jack to collect their equipment from the armory for their last patrol together. Fortunately, it was an ordinary day, no shootouts, no murders, just a few traffic tickets. The city felt unusually calm, not like Los Santos. Returning to the station in the evening, the other teams had also encountered no major incidents, except for John and Neela, who had arrested a scantily clad, sexy woman. Seeing the woman striking seductive poses for the booking photos, Jack patted John's shoulder in amusement. "What did you do to her? The strap of that sexy dress is broken." John, filling out his report, looked exasperated. "I arrested this lunatic at a valet service at a 5-star hotel. She tried to stab a waiter over a minor scratch on her car. When I handcuffed her, she struggled, tearing her dress and exposing herself." Jack shook his head. Fortunately, this was America. In his previous life, he had seen women on Billy who stripped off their underwear to throw at police officers to resist arrest. "Good work. This way, ma'am." John, having finished his report, thanked the colleagues assisting with the booking process. He walked the woman to a temporary holding cell, sincerely explaining, "Please believe me, I didn't mean to expose you like that. The bystanders who took photos have deleted them at my request." With that, he locked her in the holding cell. The woman, defiant and arrogant, sneered, "Do you even know who I am?" John replied professionally, "Your name is Astrid Hazer. No criminal record, no notable offenses." Astrid snorted, looking down her nose at him, "What's your name?" John, having dealt with many such characters over the past few months, pointed to his badge, "I'm John Nolan, badge number 25253. If you want to file a complaint, that is your right." "Oh, believe me, you'll have something filed against you soon," Astrid replied with a hint of menace. John closed the cell door, unconcerned, not responding further. Jack, who had been watching, frowned, feeling a strange sense of déjà vu about the scene. Just then, Angela, looking dejected, approached with Hannah. "Do you gentlemen have time? Join me for a drink. I plan to get wasted tonight." Jack hesitated, deciding not to speak. Ever since deciding not to be everyone's go-to guy, he consciously controlled his behavior around other women. Good guy John, however, was concerned. "What's wrong, Angela?" She checked Wesley's phone, thinking he was cheating. Hannah explained for her. "And he found out?" Jack, always eager for gossip, couldn't help but ask. Angela glared at him, making him shiver. "I apologized to him, but he didn't forgive me. I think we're done." Seeing her dejected state, Hannah comforted her best friend warmly. "If he really loves you, he'll come around. Maybe you just need some time." With that, she led Angela, and the four of them headed to their usual bar. To comfort her heartbroken friend, Hannah treated them to an expensive bottle of whiskey. It was clear that Angela truly liked Wesley. After just a few drinks, she started crying about her unhappy childhood. According to her, she was so insecure about this relationship because her father had left home when she was young, abandoning her mother and 5 siblings. Her mother had struggled to raise her and her 4 brothers alone. So, although she had always pretended to be a tomboy, deep down, she longed for someone to rely on. She believed Wesley was her destined one, which led to her irrational actions. John and Jack, sweating bullets, whispered to each other. "Do you think she'll shoot us when she sobers up?" Jack asked nervously. John looked worried. "I'll probably be okay, but you're definitely doomed." "You kept prompting her." Jack felt uneasy. It wasn't his fault his psychology skill was still at the beginner level. His curiosity had gotten the better of him, prompting him to try it out, not expecting this tomboyish woman to open up so easily. Chapter 46, Under Attack. Despite the joking around, Jack was quite fond of Angela and Wesley as a couple. Though they often bickered, their relationship remained solid over time. In fact, apart from the self-narrated hunter couple, this pair was one of the rare positive representations in most American TV shows. They faced life and death crises together, navigated daily life's ups and downs, and eventually had 2 children. Jack thought it wouldn't be bad to have a loving, ordinary life like theirs. With this thought, he and John headed to the parking lot, where Hannah had already taken the unconscious Angela home. Due to Los Angeles's temperate Mediterranean climate, the weather was mild year-round. Even in December, the evening temperature was still in the teens. The cool night breeze refreshed the slightly tipsy pair. John's old Ford pickup was parked closer. As they reached his car, Jack was about to wave goodbye when a screech of tires sounded behind them. A chilling sensation shot up Jack's spine, instantly sobering him. He shoved John to the right side of the pickup and dove in after him. Almost immediately, rapid gunfire erupted, bullets pelting around them like hail. Jack pressed John's head down, trying to keep both of them behind the front wheel. The thin steel of civilian cars couldn't stop automatic rifle fire, only the engine block and thick wheel rims offered any real protection. Time seemed to stretch endlessly. Nearly every car alarm in the parking lot blared. Jack drew his Colt Python from his shoulder holster, silently counting seconds, but the gunfire continued relentlessly. John's pickup was soon riddled with holes, its gas tank punctured, leaking fuel. Jack, growing restless and considering a risky counterattack, finally heard the gunfire cease. Fearing a trick, Jack feigned a peek, saw no reaction, then cautiously half-exposed himself to retaliate, only to glimpse 2 red taillights speeding away. "Fuck," Jack swore loudly. The recent barrage hadn't spiked his adrenaline, but his anger was through the roof. John, still crouching by the truck, was drenched in cold sweat. He hadn't experienced the intense shootout at the Bronson building and was visibly shaken by the sudden assault. Jack pulled him up and told him to call the police. He took out his phone to call Hannah, summarizing the situation and advising her to wake Angela and return quickly to avoid potential danger. Jack roughly understood the déjà vu he felt when seeing that whore threaten John earlier. If he remembered correctly, Zoe died protecting John in this storyline. Feeling a surge of frustration, he reminded himself to stay calm. He knew Zoe died in this event but couldn't recall the specifics. Regret over not paying closer attention to the show wouldn't help now, they had to take it step by step. Within 5 minutes, Hannah's Mustang roared into the parking lot. She jumped out, checked Jack over anxiously, and only relaxed when she saw he was unharmed. Angela, forced awake with a bottle of cold mineral water, looked around the chaotic scene in a daze, still processing what she'd missed. 10 minutes later, a swarm of police cars arrived, sirens blaring. Tim, Lucy, and Neela, in plain clothes, also showed up after being notified at home. Tim gaped at John's bullet-ridden pickup in disbelief. "Who did you 2 piss off?" Jack pointed at John. "Ask him." They were clearly targeting him. The assailants were heavily armed, spraying over 100 rounds at us with modified drum magazine assault rifles as soon as we reached the truck. When I was about to retaliate, they drove off. I only saw the taillights, not the license plate, suggesting they're experienced professionals. Still shaken, John shook his head, looking bewildered. Lucy and Neela, done questioning the night patrol officers, approached. The night shift colleagues checked the surroundings, but no one saw the shooters, Lucy said. Or no one wants to admit they saw them, Neela added. They found the car used by the shooters. It was reported stolen this afternoon. Just then, Zoe and Chief Gray walked over. Zoe revealed the truth. Intelligence indicates you've been marked for assassination by the Southern Front. Tim looked displeased. The old rookie got a gang bounty on him before me. Guess I need to step up my game. This is unbelievable. Typical Tim. Fully awake, Angela had a different take. This likely isn't about John's police work but personal grudges. Otherwise, why would the white supremacist Southern Front target him? John, even more confused, asked, "Excuse me, white supremacist gang? Assassination order? What's going on?" Chief Gray explained, gangs usually avoid targeting police to avoid massive trouble unless a cop disrespected a gang member, prompting an assassination order. John, mouth agape, looked around, not comprehending. Jack sighed. "Remember the whore you arrested today? She threatened you. She tore her dress and accused me of humiliating her," John suddenly realized. Zoe nodded. Astrid Hayes, a woman linked to the Southern Front's leader. They're one of California's most violent gangs. Because of her pillow talk, the gang leader ordered all members to hunt you down, Chief Gray added. "And what about me?" "I helped John arrest her," Neela said eagerly, viewing a gang bounty as a badge of honor, like Tim. Chief Gray looked exasperated, unsure whether to feel relieved or frustrated by his subordinates' reckless attitudes. The handcuffing was done by John, so the hit order is on him. Neela looked disappointed, glaring at a seemingly relieved Tim. This former undercover detective, now a veteran officer, was clearly fearless. Chapter 47, Worry. While listening to the conversation and trying to recall more details, Jack looked at Zoe and asked, "Superintendent Anderson, how many members does the Southern Front gang have?" Zoe, who had been subtly observing Jack to ensure he was uninjured, finally relaxed upon hearing his question. Now she could openly look at him in front of everyone. Statewide, there are about 5,000 to 6,000 members. In the greater Los Angeles area, there are at least 2,000. Chief Gray turned to John. "So the priority now is to ensure your safety. I'll temporarily reassign you from street patrol. I suggest you rest at home for a while, and a team of officers will be stationed near your house 24/7. Seeing it was the right time, Zoe offered to escort John home. In her mind, no gang would dare attack a superintendent. Jack's internal alarm bells rang, but it was unwise to publicly question his direct superior's orders, let alone try to stop a superior's decision. Suppressing his anxiety, he smiled and said, "I'll go too. I'll stay at John's place tonight. I warned him about the last attack at his home, and now this. I don't mind him owing me more favors. I could use help with my new house's renovation." John gratefully patted his shoulder. "You should have asked me sooner. I suspected you couldn't handle that super deluxe kitchen by yourself." Since the old Ford pickup was totaled, John rode in the police car Zoe had arrived in, while Jack followed in his second-hand Chevrolet. Fortunately, they reached John's home without incident. After a brief conversation, Zoe prepared to leave. Jack quickly followed and called out to her outside. "Superintendent Anderson." Zoe smiled and turned, her high ponytail creating a beautiful arc in the night. Jack hesitated. He wanted to remind her to be safe but didn't know how to start. Zoe at work was different from their private interactions, self-assured and decisive, not as gentle and approachable. This confidence was likely necessary for a woman to become a leader in a male-dominated police system. Chief Gray, also from a military background, respected Zoe not just due to rank differences. As a grassroots commander who had grown from street patrol, he had skills for handling incompetent superiors. Jack never saw Chief Gray treat Zoe perfunctorily, even in words. Zoe had mentioned that Chief Gray initially doubted her decision to recruit the old rookie John. Yet, as John proved himself, the black-faced chief grew increasingly fond of him, seeing in John a reflection of his own middle-age crisis and admiring Zoe's judgment. An idea sparked in Jack's mind, forming a vague plan. But it wasn't time to reveal it, he needed to persuade John first. I have some ideas, but they're not fully formed yet. Could you provide some information on the Southern Front?" I'll report back to you tomorrow morning. Zoe seemed surprised but quickly nodded. Her eyes filled with deep emotion. I'll send it to your email when I get back. Stay safe tonight. This wasn't the time for intimate gestures. John was inside, and a police car was parked across the street on protection duty. Jack restrained the urge to hug the beautiful officer, simply saying softly, "You too, dear." Zoe blushed, giving him a playful glare. My parents will send Hannah to Quantico tomorrow. Just report to the office directly. After their farewell, Jack returned to John's house. The old rookie had thoughtfully laid out a blanket in the living room with a pot of coffee and a box of 5 Cohiba Lanceros cigars. Wow, you had these hidden away. Jack delightedly took a cigar, inhaling its rich aroma. He didn't have a smoking habit but loved the rich scent of Cuban cigars. When feeling anxious or needing long contemplation, he'd light a fine Cuban cigar like burning incense, a rustic yet luxurious indulgence. John skillfully clipped the cigar and lit it with a long birchwood match before handing it to Jack. The fragrant smoke filled Jack's mouth, lingered on his tongue, and was slowly exhaled, relaxing him. John, sitting opposite, also showed a look of enjoyment. Thank you for saving my life again, Jack. I don't know how to thank you, John said solemnly. Jack waved it off. Didn't I say? Help me fix that damn kitchen, and we'll call it even. I've already wasted nearly $100 worth of materials. John laughed, then frowned. I can't go to work like this, can I? I mean, I'll endanger everyone within 5 feet of me. We've been in danger since becoming street cops. A stray bullet could kill us any day. Jack replied with a wry smile. Did you become a rookie cop at 45 thinking it was safer than your previous job as a construction contractor? John asked, puzzled. You mean I should go to work tomorrow and pretend the gang's hit order doesn't exist? Jack's tone was matter of fact. Shouldn't they fear us? We're the ones who make these scumbags tremble. If today's incident reaches the higher-ups, they'll be angrier than me. This is a police state. Since when do gangs challenge police authority? But Jack then added, ultimately, it's your decision. You have a family. Colleagues will understand whatever you decide. John nodded. Superintendent Anderson suggested the same. I'll go to work tomorrow. They'll need all hands on deck. Just then, Jack's phone beeped. Zoe had sent over a trove of information. Chapter 48, Response. I have an idea that needs your help to refine. Superintendent Anderson sent me the information on the Southern Front. Let's discuss it. Jack waved his phone at John. The next morning, Jack and John rushed to the police station, dragged Chief Gray, and headed straight into Zoe's office. An hour later, the office door finally opened. You are the most reckless guy I've ever met, Officer Tavor. Chief Gray grumbled, glaring at Jack. John defended Jack, but you can't deny it's a brilliant plan. If we succeed, we can. I understand, which is why I didn't outright reject it, Chief Gray interrupted, clearly irritated. From now on, only a few people know about this plan. The briefing is about to start. You have 5 minutes to change. Yes, Commander. The two hurried to the locker room. Today's briefing room was unusually crowded, with Detective Ben Sikora from the Narcotics and Gang Unit leading a group of detectives. Sorry I'm late. As the solemn-faced old rookie John walked into the room, Tim was the first to stand and start clapping. Jack stayed by the door, smiling and clapping too. This was John's moment to shine, and everyone applauded his courage. Even as police officers, not everyone dared to face a large-scale gang's violent retaliation, especially a rookie of less than 6 months. Once everyone was seated, Zoe took the podium. Yesterday, the Southern Front attempted to murder one of our officers. Today, it's our turn to strike back. Your commander will explain the specifics. Chief Gray stepped up next. Some of you may already know, the Southern Front was founded 15 years ago by a group of white supremacist prisoners. Since then, they've expanded into various areas. Drugs, prostitution, extortion, they're involved in all of it. What sets them apart from regular gangs is their involvement in arms trafficking, making them extremely dangerous. Chief Gray clicked his remote, displaying an image of a 60-something white man with a mohawk, their leader, known as King Midas, is serving 3 life sentences in prison. This is his son, Cole. The screen showed a young white man with a cocky demeanor. He currently oversees the Southern Front's daily street operations, but his father undoubtedly pulls the strings. Getting Cole to lift the hit on John would be a huge loss of face for him. So, we'll first hit their daily operations hard, then approach his father. Classic American approach, Jack thought, noting his colleagues' nods of approval. Shouldn't they bring in out-of-town forces or even deploy the National Guard for such a situation? After the briefing, John, Jack, Angela, Tim, and Neela were held back, along with Detective Ben Sikora from the Narcotics and Gang Unit. When a muscular, bald black man in a SWAT-branded black t-shirt arrived, Zoe introduced him to the group. This is SWAT team leader Daniel Harrison. He and his team will provide backup. Now, Officer Jack Tavor will present our actual plan. 15 minutes later, everyone was staring at Jack in astonishment, struggling to believe such a bold yet practical plan came from this young officer. Let me reintroduce myself. Everyone calls me Hondo. I love this plan, bold, thorough, and innovative. The muscular black man extended his hand to Jack. Jack quickly shook it, feeling the man's strong grip. He recognized Hondo from a few episodes of SWAT, a show he found too politically correct but had to admit Hondo was a good leader. I hear you're a good shot too. Join us for some training sometime. The usually stoic Hondo extended an invitation. Though Jack knew Hondo's motives weren't entirely pure, he was tempted. While he had no plans to join SWAT, sparring with the muscleheads and honing his skills sounded appealing. Maybe he'd even get to use SWAT's expensive outdoor shooting range. Angela approached, grinning mischievously, and handed Jack her palm-sized Beretta 950. I didn't expect you to propose such a plan. I'll lend you a spare bra. Jack, exasperated, accepted the tiny gun. By afternoon, the temporary detention rooms at the Wilshire Division were packed. LAPD and LASD had launched targeted sweeps against the Southern Front across several Los Angeles suburbs. In just half a day, every brothel, gambling den, and chop shop tied to the Southern Front had been raided, with vehicles, goods, and weapons confiscated. Why can't we act on these black market operations sooner if we have the intel? Lucy asked her instructor, confused, as they left the detention center. Tim, equally frustrated, explained, taking down one criminal group often means another rises. We usually don't waste manpower on these. But today is an exception. Clearing the Southern Front's territory will attract other groups. This targeted strike will, what the hell? Tim looked at the conference room, where Superintendent Anderson was chatting with a taller blonde woman in a police uniform, also wearing a superintendent's insignia. Though rumors about Zoe's impending resignation and move into politics had circulated, nothing was official yet. Lucy, also puzzled by the scene, asked, "Is that the new superintendent?" Now, of all times. Tim, doesn't she look familiar? Lucy noted. Tim, his expression odd, stared at the new superintendent. Unable to place her, Lucy dragged him away. After they left, John walked into the glass-walled briefing room chapter 49, setting a trap. Superintendent Anderson, I'm ready, John said, his head lowered, deeply troubled and seemingly oblivious to the stranger beside the female superintendent. Zoe's pretty face flushed as she raised her hand to introduce the newcomer. This is the new superintendent, Ginny Anderson. She will accompany you on patrol and ensure your safety. John finally lifted his head, only to be shocked, his worldview seemingly upended. The new superintendent, Ginny, displeased, gave a light humph, her expression icy as she extended her right hand and uttered a single word, keys. It took a moment for John's soul to return to his body. Flustered, he fished out the police car keys and placed them in her hand. The beautiful superintendent, her ample bosom thrust forward, swayed her slender waist as she walked toward the garage, drawing numerous admiring and astonished glances from the busy officers, who began whispering among themselves. 7A-15 police car, please mark my car on duty. John put down the radio, his gaze restless, as if he couldn't find a place to settle it. J.E. Call me Superintendent Anderson from now on, came the low, slightly magnetic voice from the left driver's seat, the tone still as cold as ever. Yes, Superintendent Anderson, John replied, still somewhat at a loss, lifting his chin with his hand. The patrol car aimlessly cruised the streets of Los Angeles for half an hour when a voice came through their earpieces. It was Ben Sikora, superintendent of the Anti-Black and Narcotics Division. "Be alert, they're coming." Both looked at the rearview mirror simultaneously. A small van covered in black reflective film turned the corner and followed closely behind the patrol car. The beautiful superintendent gently pressed the gas pedal, but the speeding police car did not shake off the pursuer. She exchanged a glance with John. 3 minutes later, the patrol car turned into an empty alley, the van still tailing them. Suddenly, gunfire erupted. A heavily tattooed white man emerged from the alley, clutching his bleeding arm. He zigzagged through the streets and disappeared around the corner. Soon after, John's panicked voice echoed across all LAPD channels, "Officer down, I repeat, officer down. Damn it, they killed Superintendent Anderson." Minutes later, numerous police cars surrounded the empty alley. An ambulance arrived shortly after. When the stretcher was wheeled out of the alley, Zoe Anderson lay on it, covered in blood. Earlier, in the highest security prison in Los Angeles, the door to a solitary cell opened. Inspector Gray, with his usual stern face, walked in. The prisoner lying on the single bed turned over and sat up. He was the leader of the Southern Front, King Midas. "Today, someone told me a cop wanted to talk to me. I wondered who it could be. 10 years have passed, and you're still just a small-time inspector." Inspector Gray's face twitched, struck by the comment, and he impatiently said, "Cut the crap. I'm here about the hit order. I watched my subordinate's bodycam footage. That girl was holding a knife in front of him, and he was just doing his job. Your stupid son overreacted, and it wasn't the first time. We've busted 7 of your hideouts, arrested over 100 people, costing you at least $1 million. Think about what you might lose tomorrow." King Midas, still sporting a mohawk, grinned, showing his yellow teeth, seemingly amused by the threat. "We've been friends for nearly 20 years, haven't we? If I remember correctly, it was your capture of me that earned you your current position. You should know, the hit order was issued by Cole. He's stupid, and my men don't respect him like they do me." Inspector Gray interrupted him roughly, "Next, we'll hit your spots in San Diego, San Jose, and Victorville. I can keep this up until your son's stupidity destroys your empire." King Midas put on a nonchalant face. "If you can do it, go ahead. I won't cancel the hit order. This is Cole's honor. Without it, all this means nothing to him." "You don't know anything," Inspector Gray shouted angrily. Then, glancing behind him, he signaled the guard to leave and close the door, trying to lower his voice. "My arrogant female chief insists on personally protecting the troublemaking rookie. Think about the consequences if your men shoot at that police car. All of LAPD will go berserk. Are you declaring war on every cop in California?" King Midas's expression wavered, eyeing the inspector warily, trying to gauge if he was bluffing. The tense atmosphere in the cell felt like an eternity until a sudden phone ring broke the silence. "It's me." "What happened?" "What?" "Dead." Hanging up, Inspector Gray's expression turned kaleidoscopic, shock, anger, tension, sadness, and a faint trace of glee all flashed across his face. "Now, none of this matters." With that, Inspector Gray turned to leave. King Midas grew nervous, confused by the sudden call. "Hey, Captain, explain what that means before you go." Without turning, Inspector Gray stood at the cell door, his tone carrying a sense of relief. "Your 2 men attacked the rookie's patrol car. One died, the other escaped. The rookie is unharmed, but they killed Superintendent Anderson. Cole is as good as dead. Any cop who sees him will empty their magazine without hesitation. Your Southern Front is finished. The FBI will be on you soon. It's already too late." With that, he closed the cell door and walked away quickly. King Midas's face turned ashen. He rushed to the small barred window, shouting, "You're bluffing, right? This can't be true." Inspector Gray's voice echoed faintly from the corridor, "Confirm with your men. News like this travels fast. You're no longer useful. I have more important matters now." An hour later, the cell door reopened. An impatient Inspector Gray stood at the entrance, frowning at the anxious King Midas. Chapter 50, The Performance of Inspector Gray. "What else do you want from me?" Didn't I tell you already, you are no longer of use to me, and no one cares about the damned hit order now. King Midas, his eyes bloodshot, lifted his head and spoke in a low voice, I want to make a deal with you. Inspector Gray pondered for a moment before stepping into the cell and closing the door. Just half an hour ago, I was appointed as acting chief of the Wilshire Division by the chief superintendent. What leverage do you think you have? A mocking smile appeared on King Midas's face. Just acting, isn't it? At any moment, some politically savvy operator could swoop in and take that position, leaving you to savor the sweetness of power briefly before you retire with a pension. Maybe your family will be pleased because you'll finally have time for them. Fuck you, you piece of shit. Inspector Gray grabbed him by the collar. If you came back to provoke me, congratulations, you've succeeded. No, my old friend. In fact, we can help each other, can't we? King Midas patted Gray's arm, which was gripping his collar. I have a proposal. You find a way to save my son, and I'll provide something in return, evidence against some of my old comrades to bring them down. How about that? With such merits, I don't think anyone could. Inspector Gray snorted, using his grip on the collar to slam King Midas against the wall. I was never your friend, and you have no right to negotiate with me. Hand over the evidence and tell me where your son is hiding. If he's lucky enough, I'll arrest him before the feds and other cops do. 20 minutes later, Inspector Gray exited the prison and got into his police car. After zoning out for a while, he rubbed his chubby black face vigorously, then pulled out his phone and dialed a number. We did it. King Midas gave up evidence against 3 key leaders and some of their accounts. It's enough to take them down. The Southern Front is finished. In the office of the Wilshire Division's chief, Zoe hung up the phone, smiling as she announced to the gathered crowd. In the small office, 7 or 8 people were packed in. Hearing the news, Tim, John, Angela, and the others all beamed with joy. We move out in half an hour. The FBI will handle the 3 key leaders. Captain Hondo and his team will raid the Southern Front's hideout. Everyone else will block the surrounding roads and ensure Cole is captured. After assigning the tasks, Zoe turned her teasing gaze to a certain someone who looked like they were sitting on pins and needles. Superintendent Ginny, you can let Angela help you remove your makeup now. Jack jumped up from his chair, yanking off the blonde wig and letting out a long breath. Hey, wait a minute, I haven't taken a commemorative photo yet. Angela grabbed the wig and placed it back on his head, pulling out her phone to take a selfie with a pout. Everyone, join in. John and Tim couldn't miss this opportunity. They pinned Jack from both sides, preventing him from escaping, and called everyone over for a group photo. Even Zoe and Hondo didn't miss out. Everyone crowded together, pinning a resentful-looking Jack dressed as a woman in the middle for a group shot. Yes, everything was a setup orchestrated by Jack based on the information Zoe provided about the Southern Front. This violent gang was not invincible. Its founder, King Midas, had been in prison for years, only able to command through his foolish son. And that fool, Cole, wasn't new to issuing hit orders on cops. Jack surmised that there must be several key members within the Southern Front dissatisfied with Cole. This suspicion was confirmed by Ben Sikora, superintendent of the LAPD's Anti-Black and Narcotics Division. As the division in charge of all gang-related crimes, the LAPD anti-gang unit had infiltrators and informants in almost every medium and large gang in Los Angeles. Jack suggested proceeding with the original plan to raid the Southern Front, focusing on those discontented key members while avoiding the interests controlled by Cole. Next came the performance by the seasoned Inspector Gray, who flawlessly played the role of a middle-aged officer experiencing a midlife crisis, unwilling to remain subordinate. This gave King Midas a strong psychological hint, making him feel he could take the initiative. Then came the unexpected element, a major event to shake King Midas and make him see Gray as his last lifeline. Enter Jack, disguised as Superintendent Ginny Anderson, to prevent any accidents. Jack convinced Zoe to let him act as her double and took John's patrol car. Then, an infiltrator from the anti-gang unit and another real gang member executed the hit order, letting the killer escape and informing the Southern Front. Soon after, the infiltrator posing as the killer vanished, leaving King Midas unable to hand over the shooter. He believed the police would never let his son who issued the hit order go, forcing him to propose a deal with Gray. King Midas might still be smug, thinking he saved his son and eliminated rivals, believing his gang would be more tightly controlled after a brief loss. However, the DA had already reached an understanding with Zoe. Once the 3 key members were arrested, they would offer a deal to pin down King Midas's foolish son. This was the crucial step. Once the deal was struck and Cole, the nominal leader of the Southern Front, was captured or killed, the violent gang that had troubled the LAPD for years would collapse. King Midas would pay the price for his actions, losing his influence and facing betrayal from within. I told you, Jack is a master manipulator. Next time, we should take him to church and try some real holy water. It might just sizzle on him. Seeing the plan nearly complete, John finally relaxed and felt like joking. That sizzling stuff is called a vampire, and you can find plenty on Wall Street. Jack rolled his eyes at Angela, struggling to peel off the nearly 20-pound silicone prosthetics and wipe the sweat from his chest with a towel, grumbling all the while. From today, I'm a feminist. You carry these heavy things around and still keep up with the male cops. It's amazing. Angela, done with removing his makeup, slapped him on the shoulder and reluctantly took her eyes off his well-defined muscles, putting away her Beretta 950.